Welcome, everyone. It's BRAP. It's Wednesday, October the 29th. I can't believe the month of October is pretty much done. This year has flown by so very quickly. Yeah, November's Saturday. So, and then Thanksgiving in about a month. So if you celebrate Thanksgiving here in the United States. So I want to welcome everyone to the show. Big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate the support as always. Do me a quick favor. Please hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Do the YouTube thing. Helps out the channel. What's going on, Ghostface? One more thing here, too. If you could actually do me another favor and retweet the link or share it on your favorite social media platform and let everyone know that we're live. I have a lot to talk about. And this was probably more this is more Xbox related. Let me grab Game Logic here. Oh my God. Logic, that's the perfect profile picture. What's going on, Logic? Oh my God.
Nothing much, man. Hey, we got to get after this TikTok. We got to get after these short form videos. It's time to compete. Let us compete.
Let us compete. Indeed. Let us compete. But yeah, it's this show. And I know people get upset when you talk about Xbox, but look, they're in the news a lot, right or wrong. They're in the news. The other two, Nintendo and Sony, are awfully quiet right now. Quiet in the news front, but not quiet on the games front. As we, as Nintendo just released the new Pokemon, which I forgot the title of the Pokemon game that just came out, which is exclusive, and PlayStation has released Ghost of Yote, which is their exclusive. I think on the news side things are kind of quiet, and then we have financials, which I didn't have that on the topics for tonight, Logic, but if that's something I have really just not really barely scratched the surface with looking at the financials for Microsoft, which included Xbox. I know Falky's talked about it a little bit on Twitter. I think you were giving a quick glance as well. So if that's something you want to talk about, Logic, feel free. But yeah, again, I haven't.
Yeah, I've reviewed them very quickly and have some commentary on them. Maybe more so questions, but absolutely, yep.
All right, no, that sounds good. Oh, Falky will be on Thrifties in 45 because it looks like Falky's going to be on another show here, shortly. So, Logic, so we were talking about Ghost of Tsushima earlier. I keep saying Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yote, and I finally made it to that farm that you were talking about today.
Oh, well, I didn't. I feel bad that I shamed you into backtracking because, like, you told me to backtrack to play the village missions, and I said okay, but I'm not. I don't really have any intention.
You're like, I'm not gonna go back.
Yeah, I'm playing the game organically, right, in the way that I would play it, right? And I made the decision to bypass that, so I don't want to sully. I may do that, like, on a, once I finish the main campaign or something, or when I feel like I have like a reason that I would do that. Mm-hmm. But I'm sticking with my in-game creative choice for right now.
Actually, you know what? That's fair, because I actually like what you just said. I want to experience the game in a very organic way. I think a lot of people are doing that with this game, because we've talked a little bit about the game and we've had some slightly different experiences with Ghost of Yote, which I think is really cool. But I did backtrack, and I'm glad I did, though, Logic, because I forgot what's the weapon that you retrieve from the farm mission. It's the
kunai.
The kunai,
yeah.
The throwing daggers.
Right.
Yeah, I'm actually glad I went back and got them, because had I not done that, things. I mean, not that things would have been Like there's certain instances where like you can see how the kunai comes in handy. Like
Yeah,
really,
it's an equalizer. Like when
yeah,
so like bows, like enemy arrows create a bit of a tactical challenge. However, there's a
yep,
tell, right? You know when they're coming, so you can take action. When you start getting those enemies that have the kudaragi, like that creates a different tactical angle, right? To combat, because now they can hit you at range. I always have a problem in that game, and I know this is my only problem with like get good. Um, I always have a problem picking up the attacks that don't have like a glow to them. So like that first katana strike that comes from an enemy, I get caught by that thing like 50% of the time, you know. And when they get the kudaragis, right, then that creates kind of the same problem. Like I probably need to mess with the settings to create a little more contrast between the in-game models in the background. So maybe that'll help me like detect that a little more. Um, I also wonder if there's like an accessibility setting that like puts like an outline on enemies or something, like in how like in Halo Infinite in the multiplayer you could put like a different color or whatever to the enemies, which I used to always do. But yeah, like I said, and so having the kunai helps with that, right? Because you can slow those kudaragi guys down from getting in range of you, um, and therefore give yourself a little more time to manage the battle space, right, in combat.
yeah. No, that's a great point, Logic, and it's kind of like an equalizer of sorts with the with the I forgot the other weapon you just mentioned, um, that has a bit more
The
range with
kudaragi, the
the
chain, the
kudaragi.
mace
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
chain, yeah,
yeah,
or blade
yeah. I
on the
mean that.
chain, yeah.
Yeah, that actually having those daggers actually is kind of an equalizer to that. And even when you start um, the part of the world that I'm in, that we're actually in the same part, but even when you start, you come across those enemies that start shooting at you from trees, shooting arrows at you from the top of trees. They're like on a platform. Um, Having those daggers is a way to equal as a kind of an equalizer to that, right? As opposed to trying to get your bow and arrow out and trying to take them out. Um, so I'm glad that I went back and I backtracked a little bit. And actually, it's not really backtracking as much because I don't think I had explored that part of the map. I'd kind of just explored. I'd go. I went to the red roof, the red roof end, the red inn or whatever it's called. I went there first, and then I kind of just I met. There's a care NPC there, and there's a couple missions that you do with her, and I kind of went that path. And so then I had to go to the other side of east of the red roof inn to find that farm, and so I'm glad I did because it opened up the map and then also opened up other missions and things and other areas for me to explore. So one of the things I did pick up, I don't know if you've unlocked this. Have you like what like with some of the like wolf summons that you have? What have you unlocked there? Have you kind of unlocked that particular skill tree with the wolf?
No, no, I have not.
Okay, I'm not going to spoil anything there, but there's some cool unlocks there with the wolf that you can that you can open up that kind of helped in the game. So um, but I got to say, Logic, I'm really enjoying the game a lot. I'm definitely enjoying it more than I did Tsushima. Um, this game, and again, I haven't played Tsushima in probably 4 years. So my memory's a bit foggy with Tsushima, but this game, from what I can remember, from Tsushima at least, this game seems a bit darker. Maybe that's just Atsu's character, but the combat does feel much a bit more fluid than from what I remember from playing Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, it's very much. I mean, Jin's story is really one of kind of trying to like restore honor um rights, right some injustices. Whereas I think things here, I mean, you could definitely say that there is, well, first of all, there's no theme of restoration of honor in Ghost of Yotai. You could say that the writing injustices is common, but I feel like Yote, there's a lot more gray. I don't. I guess it's an interesting question, right? Is Atsu more of a hero, particularly as represented in like a lot of the side missions that she comes across, than Jin is? Because you could kind of look at Jin and say, well, you could look at Jin as benevolent and a hero, but he's really about like, I mean, Japan didn't necessarily have a monarchy in that way, but he's really about like restoration of something he's trying to put in place that's based on this notion of like nobility, which and imperialism to a certain extent, which you extend that 200 300 years out, and we look at that in retrospect, and maybe it's not the Gilded Age, right, that we try and anoint it with. Atsu has a very. It's funny because the television show I'm watching now is Deadwood. I haven't gotten through much of it. It's a series that I picked up, watched the first couple of episodes before, and then like dropped it, and I'm coming back to it, realizing how much, to a certain extent, it's like Sons of Anarchy, who are all criminals. But the thing that's different with Deadwood is, there's very much kind of a painting of people as kind of like these roving heroes, right? These vigilantes, right? These people who are trying to instantiate law and order and are always trying to maintain the balance between right and wrong. And so there's a little bit of that to Atsu. I think maybe more so than there was to Jin, I think.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. She seems to me more of a vigilante than Jin Sakai. I think that's a great point. Jin Sakai was trying to like basically restore like I don't want to say, I guess a sense of order, or like I think you used the word imperialism. I think, right?
Well, I mean, he's trying to restore that sense of order, but that sense of order is actually right based on the notion of like nobility, monarchy,
Nobility.
imperialism, kind of.
Yeah. And I don't remember if his uncle or whoever it was, his dad was a. I don't remember the story now, but anyhow, no. There's definitely a contrast between the two, right? And the two stories in the game. And I think I just prefer the story. I think with Atsu, at least, I prefer her story and journey than a bit more so than I do Jin Sakai. I think she is there are some grays with her character. As you start having conversations with NPCs and do these side missions with other NPCs, you start getting a little bit more of her. It's the game starts opening up her character a bit more, and you start getting some insight into her her journey, right? What led her here. And yeah, while she is driven by vengeance and she's kind of accepted the idea that she's going to die, there is in what she's, I mean, I think I said this to you before, like she's a killer. I mean, she's an assassin, right?
Right.
She's a gun for hire. But that being said, there's a reason for that, right? It's not because she's generally evil per se, right? Like she's like this like inherently evil person, but she became that. Vigilante, and I think of Batman. She came like that because of what happened to her family, right? In similar ways, what happened to Bruce Wayne and his family. But I don't want to give too much away. But the point is I'm enjoying this game more so than Ghost of Tsushima. So, and I've definitely I definitely I like the combat so much. I'm always looking for a fight. Like I literally will like go around like just like hop on the horse and try to find a fight. That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
I let no roving band go by unpunished.
I don't either.
Anybody who's coming by on a horse, like I close distance, right, to ascertain whether or not they're an enemy, right, so that they can get wrecked if they are. You and I were talking earlier today, or maybe yesterday. And I was like, the only people that I give a wide berth are bears.
I don't even let the bears go by. I don't. I'm hunting bear. The deer, the deer get a pass. But yeah, I'm the same way. Like if I see, it's funny because sometimes you'll see like Saito's men and horses, right? And they had the
Yeah,
banner, and you
right.
actually see them. They'll actually go past you. They're looking for you, but they won't see you. They'll go past you, and I just come back around. I'll circle back around. Seeing them out of the corner of my vision, I'll circle back around and go chase them, just to engage them.
Nice.
Yeah. So, but yeah, definitely so far my second favorite game of the year. Probably not. Definitely, it's still not going to be like for me. Game of the year is still Expedition 33.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nothing's topped that. Nothing's topped that yet. So what's
Yeah,
this?
and I like what
If I get back in
Buyukasha says in the chat. Tsushima is about honor versus the ghost. Yote is vengeance versus her wolf pack. I don't know if that view is supposed to be versus or with, but yeah.
Oh yeah, that's actually a great point. Yeah. All right. Logic. Let's discuss the Microsoft financials. Again, I briefly glanced over them. But are they are they things that anything in particular that really stood out to you from what you for what you've read?
I think the thing that kind of jumped out at me was, and I saw the highlights. Like, it's surprisingly, actually, there wasn't a lot discussed about Xbox in this in their earnings report, the PowerPoint slides, which is what I always review unless I feel like I really need to dive deeper. I feel like they've talked about Xbox to a much greater extent than they did this quarter. Um, it's also kind of funny. I see some people already quoting stuff incorrectly. Um, but so in their more personal computing reporting segment, which includes more than just Xbox, revenue grew by 4%, driven by Windows OEM and search and news advertising, partially offset by declines in our hardware business. And I'm bringing this up because, like when I look at this, the report, the segment report for MPC, I'm always looking for, is there anything that's like, because we don't get these numbers, but I do look for whether or not anything positive or negative is attributed to the Xbox line of business. Cost of revenue declined 3%, driven by lower hardware sales, partially offset by growth in search and news advertising. I think that statement is not entirely attributable to Xbox. I think that is partially attributable to Surface as well. Um, so, what that exact mix is, I'm not sure. Gross margin dollars grew 11%. And again, this is the MPC segment, which includes Xbox, Surface, and some of their other consumer facing businesses. Gross margin dollars grew 11%, up 10% current currency, and gross margin percentage increased, driven by sales mix shift to higher margin business. Um, I've seen one misstatement that there was a discussion of margin. The margin percent, that line does not refer to the margin percentage growing. That is that gross margin dollars, right? The linear amount grew. Operating expenses grew 4%. So again, what we should look at and what we should glean is that it became more expensive to drive the business. And out of that, they made more linear dollars in margin, not necessarily percentage. The operating expenses growing, um, uh, tells me that it's costing more money to make the business go. Operating expenses grew 4%, up 3% current currency, driven by investments in AI talent and compute capacity to support product development that benefits the entire portfolio. Operating income grew 18%, up 16% current currency. So that is a positive statement on the reporting segment, that their profitability did increase. But as we go on, we will see that is not something I would attribute to the Xbox division. What I would attribute that to a lot to is layoffs. Because when you lay people off, you suddenly strike their salary, their benefits, and any costs associated with them. FY26 Q1 segment highlights gaming, Xbox content, and this is the one that threw me for a loop. And like I'm quite honestly flabbergasted at this, and I need some more time to like reconcile this because just at face value, like it doesn't make sense to me. And it means things to me that it could indicate things to me that are more dire than I've even been putting in like my calculations and predictions up to this point. Xbox content and services revenue grew 1%, relatively unchanged current currency. So the statement on current currency is a statement about strength of the dollar and foreign exchange rates. Overall, what they reported is that impact on their businesses this quarter was negative 1%. So what that means is the financial reality is that they took in more sales in transactions, but because of the value of the dollar and foreign exchange rates, the net reality is actually 0% growth. Xbox content and services revenue grew 1% on a strong prior year comparable, driven by growth in Xbox Game Pass and third-party content, partially offset by a decline in first-party content. Now, so the year-over-year that they're comparing it to is FY25 Q1, which was the quarter right after they closed the sale with Activision. So their content and services revenue growth that quarter jumped 61%. So in the quarters since they've closed that deal, their growth each quarter has been 2%, 8%, 13%, and now 1%. So there's not really a good news story there, right? And again, I think most of these percentage jumps in FY25 Q3 and Q4 heavily driven by layoffs. If their business has been growing, it's been very small. And what we're actually seeing here in FY26 Q1 is year over year, it's actually contracting, right? Xbox hardware revenue declined 29%, down 30% current currency. So, that backslide continues and is even worse. I think the reason this is throwing me for a loop, and help me out, and chat help me out if anybody doing Google research. If I'm not mistaken, the first games started showing up on PlayStation in May of last year. And so it has roughly been a little bit over a year since they've been pushing games at pretty high volume over to PlayStation. And they've pushed some pretty big titles over to PlayStation. And earlier in the year, I'd actually written that what it seems like to me from the numbers that I'm seeing is that they're hitting that point where they're actually making the same amount of money or maybe more money by putting games on PlayStation than they are on their own platform, right? When you talk about like strictly like sales to sales. So the fact that you've sent all these games over to PlayStation, and we've had all of these quarters and all of these NPD months of people yelling and screaming about how the best-selling games on PlayStation are actually Xbox published games, that should have all been upside. That should have all been like wildly profitable. Because theoretically, the expense that you're sending them, the expense that you're incurring by sending them, according to all the people who have the narrative that it doesn't cost anything to port games, like every sale should have been net upside. So I'm currently trying to reconcile, and I haven't yet, how in the world you're doing this large volume, highly profitable business by sending your games to other platforms, and which you weren't doing a year ago, right? Or you had just started a year ago. how has that not had like the impact that I would expect? Inclusive of you then like laying large numbers of people off, which should have also made you like way more profitable. So it's a little weird to me, and there might be there might be some funny accounting going on here. Um, as far as like what what business where are you counting that profit? Are you allocating that all to the NPC segment? We're I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by the that 1%. um the hardware declines don't surprise me because we've actually consistently seen that now for
No,
I
yeah,
mean
I
that's
really
just
discount like that hardware number comes out, and I really discount it as being relevant at all. Like I mean, okay, you're telling me that your hardware business is basically absolutely ineffective. Like that doesn't like the needle hasn't moved on the total number of Xboxes sold in in a very 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 long time. And in fact, every time we hear new numbers, they're actually less. Right, like they paint the picture that the previous sales numbers that we heard about were actually overly optimistic. So
yeah, it's just it's interesting. I think at some point we'll look back at the Xbox, this generation in particular, as a case study, right? Of Microsoft, this behemoth. And I think this speaks to I think what you wrote in your blog earlier today about how difficult it is to launch hardware. And there's only a few companies. Nvidia just hit 5 trillion valuation today. At least that was reported today. But there's only a few companies, to your point, Logic, that can actually do this. But even that being said, despite the money and resources that Microsoft has, they've struggled in the console space. We see the Xbox One being the first, be the first generation where they see a loss of market share in comparison to the 360 generation, and now this generation is going to be a consecutive generation when they've lost market share based on the hardware numbers in comparison to the Xbox One. I'd have to go back and look at these numbers again, but I do believe last I checked, and I have to go back and pull this up again. But I do believe that and maybe this was Matt Piscatella that reported this. Again, I have to go back and double check, but the series consoles were tracking behind the Xbox One in console sales here in the US. And so I think it's going to be interesting when it's all said and done, Logic, especially in light of Satya Nadella's interview yesterday and what we're hearing, some of the voice tracks that we're hearing from Sarah Bond, and next generation hardware, and I think we're going to look back at this, and I think it's going to make for an interesting case study on how Xbox or how Microsoft got here with the Xbox platform, despite having success in the 360 generation, and despite I think I would even argue they had some good success at the launch of the original Xbox. The fact that they even outsold Nintendo with their first console, I thought was pretty amazing, actually. And then born out of that console launch was Halo, which I want to talk about here in just a second as well, Logic. But let me grab the super chat here. Gaming Ledger with a $5 Canadian says, interesting time in Xbox land. Have a great show, gents. Thank you, Gaming Ledger. Appreciate that. I think Upper Room AK has a question. I think this is probably for you, Logic. He's asking, y'all think that 1% content and service increase is really bad considering the price just went up? Revenue should be up quite a bit more due to that, right? Any thoughts there, Logic?
Well, I didn't pick that one up because Valinor said hits next financials with October 1 start. They intentionally started to increase to not impact their COD quarter. So his statement is that he thinks so or to tie the two together. So I think what Upper Room is saying is that, hey, they should have gained more revenue from raising the price, and then therefore revenue should actually be up. But what they also experience is they at a minimum experienced a bunch of churn, right? And I think this churn will be corrected. What I'd previously what I'd previously written earlier this month, I think, was that I suspect that there's a lot of, they raise the price, F those guys. We got a lot of influencers and content creators running around claiming that they canceled Game Pass. And I'm like, I think those guys will be back. Like COD's gonna drop, they're gonna get a bump. They're gonna get, other family members who don't know, that this whole Game Pass thing is going on. We'll get them like Game Pass gift cards or whatever from GameStop or like you have this idle hands phenomena that goes on during the holiday seasons here in the US, over the Thanksgiving break and over the winter holiday, where, some casual purchases, knock-on purchases will occur. Game Pass, I think, is one of those things. So I think at the end of the day, what I've written is that I think Game Pass will be fine from these price increases, but what they may have experienced is a momentary, cancel my subscription type of thing, which, depending on how they report revenue, right, could have had a negative impact. And Valinor's theory is that, they did that price increase now so that effect would take place, and then next quarter, their COD quarter, you get not only just the normal people, because we've gotten industry data from Piscatella, right, and others that say, hey, when COD shows up in Game Pass, there is a cyclical bump, right, that is expected, and that occurred last year with people onboarding the Game Pass, and then it goes down. So, so I would expect next quarter they would actually be more up year over year than they were the previous quarter, because you're going to get the flood of people who come back, but you're also going to get the people who are normally just joining right from jump because of the COD bump.
The COD bump is real logic. We saw it last year, so I don't disagree that we'll probably see the bump next quarter because of release of Call of Duty, and that will probably lead to your point, logic, and an uptick in Game Pass subscription. So,
and Josh here says,
yeah.
I'd be worried they have had a bunch of game releases this year, stuff not selling. Yes, like it's squishy, right? But also remember, this is their year over year report, so this is in comparison to growth reflected in the previous quarter, is only up 1%. So whatever growth they experienced last quarter, they're only it's an acceleration statement more so than a raw speed statement, right? That has not changed, and I don't know that it would change more, a lot more this year than last year within the quarter. I mean, probably some of the like I said, my impressions of this were all by like, hey, something doesn't seem right, and I'm still in the midst of trying to pull it apart. So yes, the negative impact from Game Pass, yes, they've been putting their. I guess what surprises me is, at this point, and where I do agree with you, Josh, we're at this point in July, August, and September, you have a larger number of total titles available on PlayStation. I would think that those titles would be selling through. I didn't look at what titles landed on PlayStation this quarter specifically. So that might have something to do with it, but in aggregate, you theoretically have more titles available that should still be selling. And yet that aggregate is not resulting in a bow wave, right, that pushes the business along, any greater than 1%, and that still sits kind of weird to me. I mean, you just had you had Hellblade 2, you had Gears of War Reloaded, so those should have all been additive things to your business that had occurred over and beyond what was going on last year, that I would have thought would have propelled the business to more than 1% growth. But
Yeah, that's kind of what that's where I had initially landed. as well, Logic, that with some of the releases that may have been the case, but I think what's going to be interesting is I would expect, I think, to your earlier point, that we see a better quarter. What I would call the COD quarter, because Call of Duty is going to release, and that thing's a behemoth, and it's going to drive sales. It's going to drive a lot of stuff. Game Pass subscriptions. I don't know about. I don't think it will drive hardware sales, but it's going to sell a lot on PlayStation. It's going to sell on Xbox a bit. It's going to sell on PC. It's going to sell, and then it's going to drive Game Pass subscriptions. So,
yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean that bump occurs, but it wasn't huge.
No, it wasn't. I mean, it's interesting because I think that was last year was the first year that COD had actually released in Game Pass day and date.
Right.
What's interesting is that we never actually got an actual number from Microsoft. What we got was, we saw the biggest bump in I think Game Pass subscriptions ever, right?
Right, which is kind of a typical Microsoft Xbox kind of no shit statement to me, right? Which like Phil Spencer's recent statement. We're seeing 20% growth in Japan. I'm like, great, Phil. So you mean the 12 people out of the 12 people in Japan, you increased by 2.4 more people, and you're now at 14.4 people total playing Xbox games in Japan. That doesn't really mean a lot.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no, it doesn't, and that's a great point. I always take those statistics with a grain of salt because you don't know. It's like, okay, 20% or 25% of what, right? By the way, the Outer Worlds is out. I meant to ask you earlier in the show, Logic, are any plans on picking up the Outer Worlds too?
I had plans. I am hedging right now. It's out this week, so I'm hedging this week just because I have other things on my plate. I'm playing Ghost of Tsushima. I'm not Ghost of Tsushima. I'm playing Ghost of Yotei. I've gone back to Doom: The Dark Ages on PC. I am testing Cyberpunk 2077 on the new MacBook Pro M5. So those were kind of the first three things that I loaded into my dance card this week. It's only Wednesday. I have one more slot available, and that might go to the Outer Worlds too. But I don't know. I don't know what platform I want to play it on. The PC version and the PlayStation version, I've been seeing indications of performance problems. So, having played Avowed earlier this year, and Avowed worked fine when you threw lots of muscle at it. But there was a point where on the box I was playing it on, I had to swap that out for an older Radeon card, and it was not performant on that Radeon card whatsoever. So I have a little bit of a concern, and Obsidian has never been a company that has necessarily focused on, delivering games that sear your eyeballs, right, in terms of graphical performance. So, but I saw Reforge posted something where he was, and I think he's playing the PlayStation 5 version. I'm not absolutely certain, but he's like,
yeah, he's playing the PlayStation 5 Pro version.
Yeah, he's like, I walked off the ship and the game just started locking up. So I may be giving this thing, some soak time, but we'll see. I see K-Man in the chat. Thanks so much, K-Man, for coming through. Shout out to one of the mutuals.
Yeah, I'm going to download it because I do have a Game Pass PC. Whether or not I get to it this weekend's a different story. I did download the Battlefield Battle Royale, which is out right now. It is free to download, so I downloaded that. I actually download that on PS5 Pro. I might give that a spin. Mooch had reached out to me. Maybe it was Tuesday. We talked about it, and so if he's on, I might give it a shot just to see what it's about. But we'll see. So I don't know if I'll get to Outer Worlds 2 this weekend because I am soaking up Ghost of Yotei. Again, said this earlier. Love the game. It's a great game. It's my number 2 favorite game of 2025. But yeah, definitely at some point I'll get to Outer Worlds 2. K-Med says, what's up, K-Med? K-Med says, I'm downloading now on PC, my Xbox too. I'll give it a shot. Obsidian is a solid studio. I don't know if they're being pressured to pump shit out for the Microsoft margin machine. Yeah, Logic, I think
I think
we'll
that's
probably,
yeah, that's certainly part of the formula, which is just, unfortunate. And yeah, and I mean, and I haven't heard anything bad about it on Xbox, right? I am admittedly being resistant to being made to feel like the only place I should be playing it on Xbox when it's available in other places. I also just haven't dug into, all the reviews and the things that I'm hearing. So, I'm just I was talking to so we have people in our well I was talking I was listening to and kind of, very tepidly kind of inquiring into some people who had who were reviewing it, how comfortable, confident, bullish they were on it, last week, and just everything that I've heard from them that, since then is just that, they're not as bullish on this game as they would have been as they have been on past Obsidian games. So I'm just kind of holding off for right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I do think though, back to what you said about performance issues. I do think that the PlayStation 5 Pro version, or maybe anything non-Xbox, I don't think is running as well. I think. I don't know. I have to go back and look, but
Well, specifically on
yeah.
on the PlayStation, it's that the game has problems that is not performant on PlayStation. And so then when you take that version and you put it on a PlayStation 5 PlayStation 5 Pro, and the PS5 Pro tries to accelerate it with Pisser, right, the result you get is actually worse, right? Because the game wasn't in a good state in the first place on PS5. So again, that's only what I've read. I have not dug thoroughly into the specifics on that. So, don't quote me on that. Speaking of which,
No. The challenges of multi-platform development, but go ahead.
I hate to hijack, but that's a good point. Like I know we have a sensitive topic that you and I talked about earlier this week. I feel like I do want to rant for a bit to set the record straight and kind of mention a couple of things. Are you comfortable with? I will tread lightly. I will keep myself on a short leash.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So look, this has been going on since for over a year. There are, I'm just gonna be blunt. Like this is a multi-platform show, right? We talk about games that we're playing on Xbox, PC, PlayStation, other devices. Yeah, I've been talking about games that I'm playing on the MacBook Pro. So everybody's absolutely welcome here. I have been and I will continue to be direct about behaviors that I feel are weird or just not the expected norm within certain fan bases and communities. And what has happened now on 2 occasions is Xbox fans have come to this show. They have then run from the show to be tattletales and snitch to Xbox content creators. In what I can only assume is this thing of like, hey, those guys were talking shit about you. And that's fine. Weird, but it's fine. But my big problem is that from the context of it, like, this started when we talked about Paris at one point, and I don't, if Paris wants to come here and watch the show and hear what I have to say about Xbox content creators, he can. I don't shirk from any of that. My big problem is that what is apparent is that when you guys go and give these reports because maybe you were assigned to be on foot patrol and be the Xbox the Xbox representative who came by the BRAP show to police it, right, and to write us a ticket or whatever is going on, right? But the problem I have is that what you're reporting back is inaccurate. I don't get the impression that you're actually clipping the show, and if you are, you're not clipping it with all the context. So the thing I want to specifically say about the things that I said last episode or the episode before, where I made reference to the Xbox content creators who were out at the Tokyo Game Show with the GLT. That statement was made not at all in the context of those people having been flown out to the Tokyo Game Show or having their hotel rooms paid for in the Tokyo Game Show or any of the other context of the other conversation that I was having about the weird, undisclosed, inspecific kind of shadow sponsorship of Xbox content creators by the Xbox Corporation and Microsoft Corporation. And how I do have a problem with that when it is long-term, persistent, and consistent, and it goes from being a transactional relationship to a contractual relationship with the company. My specific statement about what happened at TGS was there were Xbox content creators out at TGS meeting with, who met with the GLT, had a photo opportunity. I don't know what else was the context of any other discussions that they had with them, but my point is that they were seen glad handing, shaking hands. The GLT was smiling at them, while the GLT knew that they were formulating a plan to drop the news of the Game Pass price increases the following week. And I said, that must mean one of two things, right? So let's shift into Sherlock Holmes mode, right? That must mean one of two things. Either, and I also wrote this, so very many times that I mention things on the show, I have written them with hyper specificity and at great length on Twitter. So if you hear something, you can go to Twitter and you can go read what I wrote. What I said was that must mean one of two things. Either the K-Man, GLT stands for the gaming leadership team, which is a term that Microsoft and Xbox use to refer to at least Phil, Sarah, and Matt Booty. And I assume some others, but I consider those three musketeers the GLT. So I said specifically during that segment, that must mean one of two things. Either the GLT told you that this bad news was coming and you didn't come back and inform consumers, or you need to acknowledge Xbox content creators who have this parasocial relationship with the GLT. You need to acknowledge that what has been endemically shown for a long period of time is that they give you guys good news to come back and promulgate to people to support their good guy routine, but they don't tell you when the bad stuff is happening. And you should take into consideration what that means about your relationship, right? Take it out of business and put it in personal context. What does it mean when you have a relationship with a person who only talks to you about good things, but is doing bad things behind your back that you later find out about, right? That was my point. Now, for people who felt that comment addresses them, my statement wasn't a statement of suspicion. It was just a statement of logical fact, right? There's a limited set of possibilities. I just defined what two of them had to be. If one of them is not true, if you think that that statement somehow impacts your perception, image, and exposure, your pie, then you can make a statement that they absolutely didn't tell you, right? But if you also feel that that statement was just, again, exactly what it was, an objective, logical statement about what what must or must not be true, then you can also choose to ignore it. I've also mentioned this, and I'll continue to mention this on several occasions. I have 600 followers on Twitter. I don't monetize my Twitter account. I don't monetize my YouTube channel. Several people have made mention, I've encountered this very often on Twitter. Several people have made mention, this is why no one likes you. Let me make it clear. I'm not here to make friends. I'm not here to join cliques. I'm not here to make alliances. I'm not here to make partnerships. I'm not here for follow. I'm not here trying to join some inner circle of some content creator group. I also have no honor. So whatever this notion is that there's some like unspoken code that content creators are supposed to stick to, that doesn't apply to me. I could care less. And so if I say things and I call things out that people feel are not in line with that code, that's because I don't accept that as something that's supposed to modify my behavior. Right? That's your guys' rule and your guys' game set and your guys' interest area. It's not part of my social value system. My social value system is built on other things that is clearly not in line with the way, a large part of, I'm also not a part of the gaming community. I'll say that as well. So whatever these unspoken rules are and how people are supposed to behave, I don't care. They don't apply to me.
Yeah, that last part about you're not here to be liked sort of reminds me of a conversation I had on the phone with a certain content creator who said to me, no one likes you. You come across as arrogant. And frankly, I'm like, so I don't care. I'm not here to be liked. There's I never fit in with the quote unquote content creation community, especially on the Xbox side, because I am I just don't. I'm not one to subscribe to the idea that I must brand defend anything and everything that a company does. I think it's fair to hope. I think we should be holding all companies accountable, whether it's Nintendo, PlayStation, or Xbox. I have always. I do the show for the love of video games. I'm not here, and I often, and I've seen this. I've been on, I've been a content creator now for 10 years, or a decade now. Actually, just officially 10 years last week, according to YouTube. But I'm here to talk about video games, to talk about the business around video games, because I genuinely love video games. I'm interested in how video games are made. I'm interested about the industry, how decisions are made, trends, all that other stuff, analysis. I hope some of the folks that are listening here are interested in those things too, and that's why we do the kind of show that we do. If you're looking for a show that's gonna that provides confirmation bias, that is not the show. Never will be. Never will be. I game, and everyone on this panel games on multiple platforms, as Logic mentioned. But I do think, to your point, Logic, I think it's important to kind of share that additional context, because I think sometimes what I've seen people do, and there's one individual out there who likes to clip videos, and frankly has demonstrated antisocial behavior. But this individual likes to take things out of context for the sake of stirring the pot. And, I find that to be very, very disingenuous when you do that, because there's always, at least on Twitter, there people, and even when you tweet things, people do tend to take things out of context for the sake of console warring, or trying to have a gotcha moment. Yeah, no, like you, Logic, I'm not here to be liked. I have a job. I have a family. I do this as a hobby. I don't do this for a living. And so, if someone doesn't like me because of my opinions, I don't care. I don't care.
So, can I put one more dollop on that?
Yeah.
And then I'm good for you to finish out, and we can move on. I do want to raise up one point, right? When I started blogging, really there wasn't the notion of like the content creation space back then, but like I got my start blogging and writing, and the reason I did it, at the turn of the century, right, in like 2000, 2001, the reason I did it is because I was looking at journalists, and I was trying to kind of model myself along, what gaming journalists had been doing, but I also saw the start of a change in a dynamic, and I saw that start of kind of brand alignment. But I also thought like there's something inherently problematic with people doing reviews when they're given stuff. And I don't have a problem with game codes. Like that's fine. Like I don't look. Nobody's sending their kid to college or paying their mortgage because somebody keeps them from having to spend $70 on a game. Okay, like that's fine. Like that doesn't bother me. But when you talk about bigger things like laptops, right, or or tablets or phones or something, like there's a problem with the kind of how the industry, the media, kind of approaches those reviews, in my opinion. And I've had this as a long-standing point, even when I got into doing like mobile device reviews and things. It's like a person gets a phone and they use it for like a week, 2 weeks at most. They don't live with it. They don't put their other phones down. It's just like another thing in their kit. I'm like, that's not how people live with phones. So I've had this problem, but back in the 2000s, right? What I said was, I think there needs to be kind of a voice of kind of like the regular Joe, like the man on the street who just plays games. And that's how it started. And it's gotten more entrenched over time, right? As I've grown to do more. But here's my problem, and the things that I comment on with some of the kind of the content creation and influencer space. What you guys have done with access journalism is you have recreated that problem in the democratization of content, where the democratization of content should have actually improved on that, or been a guardrail against that, or provided an alternative to that. You guys have actually gone down the path of doing the exact same thing. So in my opinion, you're not really creating content or consumer advocacy.
But by the way, Logic, I need to clarify something, because
Yeah.
because I don't want people to think that we're speaking of one particular group or content
No.
creator. What Logic is saying here is an observation, generally speaking, of what he's seen and what I've seen and what many of you in the chat have seen and what people have said to me in private is happening with content creators. But go ahead.
Yes, this is not even at Xbox content creators, right? This is just about content creation in general. I mean, the live streamers, right, have this problem too, right? I mean, and I heavily oppose like the comment that like Dr. Lupo made a few years ago when he was part of the paid group that debuted Apex Legends the day that it launched. And he made comments after that of like, well, we as streamers have this opportunity to really shape where consumers go. And I'm like, first of all, I think your guys' impression of yourself is overly lofty. But I'm also like, but you should also see the inherent problem with that, right? Like you're a paid live streamer to debut Apex Legends. How am I supposed to believe that you are going to willfully speak about the negative aspects of Apex Legends on the day that it debuts? Like you're a paid extension of the PR and marketing firm. And again, that's not like, I'm fine with that business model. I don't have a problem with that business model. But what I'm saying is what I'm articulating is the difference between, I guess, the mission that I'm on and the mission that a lot of other people are on. Part of my mission, right, is to put out word and content and perspective that is not based on anything that I'm getting. And my point that I call out, right, that I think should be observed and considered is that if the person you're relying on to keep you informed as a consumer is somehow being supported, sponsored, paid, gifted, whatever, by the company that makes the product, right, that you're being informed about, then at a minimum, that shouldn't be the only perspective that you get, right? Going back to when you hear a perspective, right, don't take my word for it. Don't take any other person's one word for it. Go seek out other opinions and seek out opinions outside of your echo chamber. I'm sorry, BRAP.
Yeah, I think that's hard for people to do, to get those opinions outside of those echo chambers. And what I've realized, and by the way, I've always been like this. If you've been following BRAP for the last decade, I'm not a fan of misinformation, disinformation. That just doesn't apply to gaming. Logic, you know me. That applies to things outside of gaming. I think that holds true for you as well. But a lot of what we do here and try to do is provide basically really try to provide a different perspective, right? A different perspective outside of the perspective of the echo chamber, the perspective of people who, for whatever reason, feel the need to brand offend, or again, this isn't just Xbox content creators, but it happens in the PlayStation space, Nintendo space. You mentioned the live streamer space, but and just really elevate the conversation, right? And try to have a more nuanced, informative conversation around gaming. And that's what we hope to do here. And you look at our chat, our live chat's always pretty civil. There isn't. I've been to other shows where the chat's just like, a big console war, right? It's a lot of back and forth, and that's we have a pretty good. We've cultivated a pretty good audience here that come in every week, listen to us live, and are pretty positive in the chat, or having good conversations.
And just to tie it off before you get to super chats, so just to tie it off, because sometimes what happens is I notice that the foot patrol who comes over here to tattletale and snitch back to the Xbox content creators frequently get it twisted when I kind of meander around and go and hit a few topics. So just to bring it back to ground truth, my comments on the content creators who were at a Tokyo Game Show had nothing to do with any suggestion that they had been flown out, had hotel rooms paid for, whatever. It was about that you guys, those people were in proximity with the GLT when the GLT was formulating and knew that they were going to be putting out bad news the following week, and that should be considered, right? What your relationship is with the GLT, and it should be considered that it was all good times and everybody was friends, right? But then the following week they came back and made a very Machiavellian move and raised the price on Game Pass for in a to an extent that it wasn't a $1 or $2 increase, right? It was a significant increase, and as we're seeing now here from the financials, may have had significant impact on their financials. So that was my point of that comment.
Yeah, no, that's no. I think that context is important. I think that context probably got lost somewhere. Let me grab the super chat here. PlayStation 360 with a $10 super chat says, "Yo, Brap, give Logic a raise. He's a good dude. He came to my Twitter space the other day." Who's PlayStation 360? Was that? I don't know who that is.
I don't know.
Was that the spaces that you were in earlier?
Yeah, I mean that was the spaces I came by where you and I were talking about. I think we were arguing with who's it, PCMR?
Eagles fan?
Eagles fan, yeah. And we were, I was walking through the chronology of the descent into badness, from the February update of 2024 to now, which is where the franchise that literally started Xbox is now on PlayStation 5.
Yeah. I will say this though, Hamp. I do have a problem though with misinformation, disinformation. I do need to say this real quick.
Absolutely.
Because this goes back to this is going to kind of pivot to how I feel about Halo, right? I did a rant on Friday with the announcement of Halo coming to PlayStation. And I went back and this is actually part of that Spaces conversation that we were having with the Eagles fan. Big shout out to Eagles fan, by the way. But this goes back to that conversation, and it made me think about again the February business meeting, and the issue I have with content creators who. There's one in particular who it's interesting with the Halo announcement. There were a lot of receipts that were pulled, right? And there's one content creator in particular who talked about, if Halo goes multi-plat, then yeah, bring out your pitchforks and why is Xbox making, hardware at this point or whatever. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something along those lines. You could probably guess who said that. My issue with content creators who do that and then pivot their voice track to literally mimic the voice track of the corporation, I have a problem with that. I have a problem. I'm not saying people's perspectives can't change, but what I find odd is that that the voice track consistently pivots, right? Consistently pivots when Phil Spencer and company decide to put out another PR statement, right? Or Eagles fan is going to be smiling ear to ear in Spaces tomorrow. Why is that? I'm curious to see why that is, Arcade. No, but
he got mentioned on the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I don't have an issue with Eagles fan. I do talk to him on Twitter and but that's my issue, Logic. It's not a conversation of, well, geez, like they're pivoting again. It almost it just comes across as disingenuous as I feel the Xbox leadership's been this generation. And the Halo thing for me was the tipping point of that. I think I've I've held back. I have criticized Xbox this generation, but I think I've held back a bit because what happens when you criticize Xbox, what the reply, the rebuttal is, oh, well, you're just a pony or you hate Xbox. No, I don't hate Xbox. In fact, I love the Xbox brand. I've been part of the Xbox ecosystem for 24 years. I actually do remember when Xbox, and again, this goes back to what I said on Friday and what I said on the show previously, is that Xbox set a very high bar for us. And what I mean by us, I mean by some of the Xbox fans that onboarded onto Xbox back 24 years ago, or some of you that onboarded, to the 360 on the 360 generation for the first time in the Xbox ecosystem. So that bar was set by them, right? And the Halo thing was kind of for me, logic. It made me feel a certain way. I I I knew this was coming. I knew that Halo would eventually come to PlayStation. I knew that it was just 4 games. We're going to learn from this, the mealy mouth Phil Spencer thing. I wasn't buying it. I was like, no, there's no way. He's leaving. It's corporate talk. He's leaving way too much wiggle room. For them to go back and say, well, we didn't say never, right? And I think in one of the interviews he did, I think he say that Indiana Jones wasn't coming to PlayStation, like it wasn't in the plans. I think you guys were talking about this on the Spaces, but
so during the business update, and again, this is the mealy mouth, used car, right, slickster salesman. During the business update, Tina Amini, who I want to keep reiterating this because I want people to be clear and so that it's understood. Tina Amini is an Xbox employee, right? So she asked, "Are any of those games Indiana Jones or Starfield?" And he said no. Now, at the time, what he was referring in hyper specific context to was were any of the 4 games that were coming across the wire Starfield or Indiana Jones. After that update, he does an interview with Tom Warren of The Verge, and Tom asked him, "Are you saying that Starfield and Indiana Jones will never go?" And his response to that was, I'm not gonna say that any property or any title is never gonna go to another platform. Now, he does they do the Xbox business update on the official Xbox podcast, right? This interview with Tom Warren is something that he did as a separate component, and that was written up in an article. So I will give grace for the acknowledgement that not everyone follows everything, right? Not everybody watched the podcast, not everybody, right, read the article. And I feel like I hope the chat here feels that I'm developing a bond with you guys, because I think sometimes I say things and you guys take it to heart. I will always say this, right? Like, don't rely on me summarizing the article. Don't rely on a content creator summarizing the article. For Pete's sake, don't rely on Chat GPT go read the article, right? These things are like a 2-minute read. You can read it while you're taking a dump, right? Like, download Instapaper as an app, right? Bookmark things, put them on your whatever, right? But go read the article so you actually get all the context and you get all the nuance, and you will see, right, the winding path, right, of the voice track that all these things had. So no, he only in the business update did he ever say it's not Halo and it's not Starfield. But like I said in the Spaces yesterday, but the way software development works, if you're going to announce in August that Indiana Jones is coming, and I give full credit to Slow-Mo for being the first who I think really gave this voice on the show. If you announce in August, if you tell Keighley to announce in August that Indiana Jones is coming to PlayStation, and like, you didn't just tell Keighley that day, right? That had been a conversation that had been going on for a while, based on how we know how he kind of puts his agenda, right, and his showrunners kind of put the show together. So it was announced in August, right, at Gamescom opening night live. So you think probably at least 2 weeks before, right? They knew, maybe longer. Based on that timeline and the way software development works, Machine Games had to be in the process of porting that game to PlayStation at the time of the February business update, right? That development already had to be in progress. At a minimum, there had to have been a conversation about it. So that's the part where we get to the only certain things are said while other things are not said. It's kind of funny that I think the fall before that business update, I think it was like in the fall of 2023, he went on another podcast and said something about like I want you to be able to buy a game in Game Pass or to consume a game in Game Pass. I also want you to be able to buy the game if you want to. And like, when I say that, people always, offer the suspicion, and I'm like, there's not, and he's like, there's nothing behind my back. Great, and this is why I say to these like now every time he says something, I'm like, no, Phil, there is absolutely something behind your back.
This is why Halo for me, like. I think for look, been critical of Phil Spencer, but I still gave it the benefit of the doubt, right? The Halo thing again was a tipping point for me, and probably because it's Halo, because it's the one franchise, the one game that Xbox is associated with. That like that you think of Xbox, you think of Halo, right? It's the game that got Xbox to the dance. It's the game that really allowed them to solidify their space in the industry. I mean, the original Xbox, nobody thought it was going to outsell Nintendo GameCube, but it did. Sold on the back of Halo and a couple other games, exclusive games, I might add, and exclusive features like the Xbox Live and everything like that. But yeah, I think for me, Logic, I just find them to be disingenuous now. They being the Xbox leadership. I don't believe anything that comes out of their mouth now. And I think what bothers me about certain, not all Xbox content creators, some of them would say things like, well, it's just 4 games. And I'm like, guys, like literally before this, he told us that we're not going to out console PlayStation, Nintendo. That should have been the first red flag.
It's just 4 games, and we're gonna learn. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird to me, like that people, and again, we'll continue with the Xbox content creators, right? That so many people like didn't catch that, or didn't give it any weight, or assert that they didn't hear it.
No,
it's super weird to me. He said
they're providing excuses, Logic, and that's the issue that I have. Right, and not all Xbox content creators, want to make that clear. But they were many. I could name some names. One of them is an elderly gentleman. One of them, our good buddy Mag does a podcast with. And it's like you're saying these things. You're saying everything's going to be fine, and you're saying that these things are going to happen, and then you're purposely misleading your listeners. Like that is just wild to me.
Right. I mean, so his specific quote was, "It's just these 4 games, and we're going to learn." Maybe I live on a different planet, but have you ever heard anybody say something, and we're going to learn, and I'm going to learn, without that? Was that not indicating that there was their intention to do more of it or to do it again? For what other reason do you need to learn? Right, from a rep, unless you intend to do more reps.
Yeah, there's no half ass in the reps. There just isn't, right? Like there just isn't. The other thing that I have an issue with, Logic, is the coverage of this, right? Where certain content creators had said, if these things happen, right, then we're going to question the existence of Xbox, or we're going to, we're going to question whether or not it makes sense to have hardware. If this thing happens, then yeah, bring out your pitchforks. But then when it does happen, it turns into, well, this is where the way the industry's going. This is the future. It's like, no. It's not it's not where the industry is going. It's where Xbox is going. And when you say this is where the industry is going, in light of things that we talk about on this show, logic, data, right? Market analysis, sales trends. I mean, a more recent example, Sarah Bond. She said that exclusives are what did she say? They're archaic or antiquated. Yeah. They're antiquated. And I'm like, really, Sarah? Like, do you not pay attention to their Circana numbers? That Ghost of Yotage in 3 days is the 18th best-selling game of 2025. Like, in 3 days, that's an exclusive. Nintendo just released Pokemon, sold what, 5 point something million copies? Nintendo sold 60 million copies of Mario Kart. Was it Mario Kart 8? Was it 8 on the Nintendo Switch? I forget which Mario Kart it was. It sold like 20 something million copies of Breath of the Wild. Spider-Man sold how many copies did Spider-Man sell on PlayStation Logic?
I forget. Like north of 10 million, something like that.
North of 10 million, right? Spider-Man 2 sold about 11 million. And you're telling me it's antiquated? And then, like, it just, like, it's almost insulting in a lot of ways. Like Sarah, like, who are you bullshitting here? Like, why are you saying these things? Like, many of us in this chat here, many of us listening to the show, probably have seen. Oh yeah, K-Mad, that guy. Yeah, until Circana can backs up his narrative, right? Then Circana actually matters, or doesn't have an agenda, or is accurate in their numbers. Oh my god, that was the worst thing. I literally lost brain cells, K-Mad. That was the worst thing ever. Bless Colin Moriarty for going on that show. So this is where I am, Logic. I don't believe them. I find them to be very disingenuous. And I think that they've, to some extent, have eroded the trust of some of the Xbox consumers, me being one of them. And I actually feel bad for, some of the Xbox consumers who probably aren't privy or don't follow the industry as closely, because they're probably going to have a rude awakening when they realize that, yeah, Xbox is not making a traditional console. We got a little sneak peek of that. It was that Sarah Bond interview where she said that exclusives were antiquated. She talked about the next Xbox hardware being this, curated, did she say high-end experience? I forget the exact words. I know premium experience, right? And then she said something about, a device for power players. And then we're going to get into Satya Nadella's comments that he had yesterday. But yeah, Halo was the last straw, Logic. And maybe the fan in me, maybe because there was a part of me that still wanted Xbox to compete. And because I do want to see the brand be successful. I lived through those years. We talked about this week or this past weekend. Like remember the Xbox culture, Logic? We talked about this, I think, on this past Saturday. It was a thing, right?
It was a lifestyle.
Yeah, it was a lifestyle.
Look, I got Xbox t-shirts in my closet.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about the Xbox culture and kind of like this kind of badge of honor that we had during the original Xbox era, where we felt like we were pioneers. We were trailblazers. Like, if you don't believe me, ask anyone who was part of the launch of the original Xbox, where we had the console that had a built-in hard drive. PlayStation didn't have that. We had games that took advantage of that hardware. PlayStation didn't have that. We had exclusives types. We had games that you couldn't get on a PlayStation console. You don't believe me? Jade Empire, The Elder Scrolls Morrowind, could play that on the PlayStation too. We had games that were developed for Xbox Live.
But Brap, all that just means that you're an old head who's too old to understand gaming.
No, fuck that. That has nothing to do with me. Look, there is a consistent, the 40-something years that I've been playing video games. At the end of the day, it's about the games, right? if you make games that are good games, that are quality, people are going to go to that platform to experience those games. Thank you. Kotar's another one. Knights of the Old Republic. But at Hamp, when we had this conversation this past weekend about the lifestyle, what it was to be an Xbox gamer, and I felt like a trailblazer. Remember we talked about like walking in the house. You knew your friends were going to be on Xbox Live. Some of your friends were calling you. Are you hopping on? Are you hopping on? Yeah, I'm leaving. Actually, I'm leaving work early.
Like that's actually a thing that I want to give big credit to, like, because I think we kind of glaze over it and skate by it in the current gaming. Like that whole like, are you hopping on? That phraseology is something that directly grew out of the Xbox 360 generation.
No, before then, but actually before then, Logic.
Yeah, I guess for me, the 360 generation was when it was at scale.
Okay, yeah, I mean, like I think common. No, that's a great point. Yeah, it actually became part of the dialogue in the gaming community, like across the board. Absolutely. It was. We talked about it on the OG Xbox, but it's probably limited to, just like I mentioned, like we had Xbox Live plans, and yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Logic. That was it. Oh. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but that was a thing, right? Hey, are you going to hop on? I mean, I remember going home, rushing home to go play Halo 2, to go play Gears, to go play Return of Castle Wolfenstein.
I also remember making fun, like if you played on both platforms. I remember making fun of the PlayStation guys when I was on PlayStation Live, because you could tell they were all in that little goofy pack-in 3.5 millimeter wired earbud headset. If they were on comms at all. And I was like, oh, man, you guys are on the pack-in headset, aren't you? And we talked earlier this week about the lock-in. When you come home early from work, you'd already ordered the pizza, right, or the Chinese food, so it was getting delivered like just before you hopped on, and then you put on that little one-sided Halo earbud headset that make you feel like you were like a Spec Ops dude.
Yeah, and you would plug in that headset to the top of the controller, and you were like, it was like you were loading a clip. That's what it felt like, and you were getting ready, and you were going to get ready to go to work on whatever multiplayer game you were playing. It felt like a cultural movement. It really did. And it felt, and at that time, like I said, I'll say it again, a lot of us felt like trailblazers. We felt like we were ahead of and kind of driving the industry in a direction that it was heading. And there was something very special about Xbox at that time. And it really was. I mean, it was really about the games. It was about, we talked about this too, like having these Western RPGs. And I think you said, I think the example you said, yeah, on the PlayStation side, we would kind of make fun of the PlayStation because they had JRPGs. Like, yeah, what did you say? Like they had,
they had your romance options, your Tifas, like, you had all this mamby-pamby, BS, and like it's weird. We're gonna look back on this as somebody suggested. We're gonna look back on this era of exclusivity, and people are gonna laugh. I don't think that's the case at all. I think we're gonna look back on this period of when Xbox used to be the hardcore aggro console, and then they walked away from that. Because to me, that was something that kind of defined the culture of Xbox. I mean, that's why I gravitated to it, right? In fact, I didn't mention this. I in fact specifically remember, from the OG Xbox to Xbox 360, how even as a lifelong gamer, I hated how small the PlayStation controllers were. And I was like, these are controllers clearly built for
kids,
Asian hands, right? And I'm like, I have big hands. Like, I don't like this controller. And then I remember getting the Duke, right? And I was kind of like, what was that show? Gosh, now I can't remember the name of it. With Tim Allen.
Home Improvement.
Home Improvement. And I remember like making this like
Yeah,
right.
Tim would make those like grunting
Yeah,
noises, like
those grunting
yeah.
male, and I'm like,
Ugh.
this is a controller made for aggro, bro. I'm like, this is, and then I remember saying, this is me. This is what I want. Like, I don't want romance options. I don't want crying over the ends of Final Fantasy.
Logic. Not
Right?
we our romance options were us betting someone, by the way,
Yeah,
on
that's what we said.
Xbox. I
We
mean,
said, you guys have romance options. We have sex options.
yeah, I mean
Mass,
that's
Mass Effect, which was an exclusive.
yeah, I mean, but that's the thing though. Like we literally like I remember like we would look at Nintendo be like that's the kitty box. Oh yeah, PlayStation. Yeah, you guys have like that fantasy world. You know, we have realistic, mature games. Like that's the stuff that we used to talk about. We used to kind of stub our nose at the PlayStation and Nintendo community because we would get those types of games, and it was defined. You're right. It defined the brand. It defined the culture. Xbox had a culture. It had a brand identity, right? And it resonated with millions of people. You know, like Corey Mass says, the dude bro box. I mean, you know, I don't particularly like that term, but yeah, it's
But it was,
you know,
and I was fine
but
with
it
it.
was, yeah.
And I think that's also why you saw such a migration of Sega kids over to Xbox, because I always held that Sega was like the mature video gaming console, right, in comparison to Nintendo.
Yeah.
So, and then like look, I'm saying these things. I don't really, you know, it's they're jokes, right? I don't really like. Obviously, the Final Fantasy franchise is a vaunted franchise, full of great artistic arcs and implementation, and a venerable history, right? So
Yes,
I'm joking when I'm
and
throwing
I won't
shade at it.
tolerate Tifa slander. By the way, I'll joke. I like come on, like Final Fantasy VII. I mean, even going back to the original. I mean, Aerith's theme song. I mean, to this day, when I played the Final Fantasy remake and Aerith's theme song started playing, I'm not. I got choked up. I got a little teary eyed. I'm not going to lie.
Right,
You
but,
know, I caught the
what I'm
feels.
trying
Go
to
ahead.
emphasize
Yeah,
is that, like, what I'm trying to emphasize is that Xbox staked its identity on a
exactly.
very Western, like, kick-ass take names, right? You know, over the top, you know, Sylvester Stallone, playing at Bogart type of style of gaming content, right? At its core and at its forefront. Like, its mascots were Halo, this big bro dude in this big chunky armor who,
Cortana.
like, just rolled in and just wrecked
Yeah.
stuff, you know?
Yeah, he would just and then look at Marcus Phoenix. Marcus Phoenix
Right,
was like Master
right.
Chief on steroids. You know, he was grunting all the time. You know, just like literally grunting all the time, and had a fucking chainsaw at the end of his gun, and would fucking take it to the oh god, what the hell the name of the what do they call
The
it? The
locust,
hive. The
the hive, yeah.
locust. I said that. Yeah, the locust. You know, and we saw that. We're like, fuck yeah. You know, and then you had Sam Fisher, born on the Xbox. And Sam Fisher is like, yeah, yeah, you guys have you know, Solid Snake, but we got Sam Fisher, you know, and Sam Fisher in a like real world setting. We used to call it we used to. It's funny back then. We used to define Xbox as the mature console. That's literally how we defined it in the community.
Yeah, so I
You
think
know,
I
and
think what I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and then and so, but then the 360 generation. I think they took that right. They took that identity right, and they built upon it. Now you started getting the same games that were on PlayStation. You started getting more JRPGs, right? So you started getting a more well-rounded experience on the 360. And it was just like, and it was all about, and the conversation was all about the games. There was never this conversation about, oh, well, we're going to do this. Oh, no, we're going to do that now. Oh, you know, I'm not hiding anything behind my back. Oh, you know, yeah, we launched this console, eats monsters for breakfast. Oh, but we don't have any games to launch with it. Like it was never like that.
Yeah, and I think that, like, and I think now we're gonna start heading for the arc of like how things are today, because I think, like, part of what the difference in what characterized the business, and you can even read this and feel this and hear this, when you go back and you read about the history, right, about the start of Xbox. This was all about kicking ass, taking names, and taking the fight to the enemy, right? And I'm talking about that from a corporate and a business perspective. That was about not shirking. right, from PlayStation, that was about going toe to toe with PlayStation, right? Putting your games in their face, challenging them to meet you on the same battlefield, right? Not cowering and hiding behind the multi-trillion-dollar company, behind cloud. And what we have seen as we've traversed over time is just the thing that you mentioned. Less of an emphasis of going head to head and toe to toe with PlayStation on the basis of games. And the voice track is always, and we're going to get to this week because we're doing the same thing again. Like Sarah, Booty, and Nadella have said something, and people are failing to recognize what they're saying and are immediately clambering on board that, oh, well, this is of course what they said is true. This is the way of the future. Like, so I'm gonna tear that apart here in a few minutes too, right? But since the OG Xbox and the 360 generation, it has been exactly, Corey Massey, right? The notion of finish the fight was about taking the fight to the competitors, right? But what it has been since that generation, and it started with Metric, but like we give Metric, we still give Metric grief today about being the cause of the downfall of Xbox. I want to be very pointed about this statement. The people who are going around saying Amy Hood in this 30% margin and she's the one who's trying to dismantle Xbox and she's the one, like, no. What you guys need to acknowledge is that the legacy of Phil Spencer as it is today is that everything that Xbox was what it was before him. Amy Hood's not taking exclusives away. Phil did that. Amy Hood's not putting an emphasis on a subscription service to make them the Netflix of gaming. Phil did that. The dismantling of Xbox and the selling off of things piecemeal that made Xbox the brand it was, Phil did that. And my point has been, like, everything since the 360 generation has not been about the games. It's been about, it's Xbox and Microsoft constantly come up with every other thing that you should be focused on. Playing your games on every screen. Games need to be on every platform. Exclusives aren't important anymore. Cloud, I mean, it's literally everything except, I mean, and they made some comments about, like, the hardware, but even they've started to walk away from that. And so what's left, and maybe we'll get time to get to my whole new theory of why Xbox is not relevant in the gaming conversation anymore. What's left is there's nothing I can think of about Xbox as a brand and a content provider that is marketed and focused on it being special.
Hey, Logic,
just,
can I piggyback off that that feels special? I think my mourning of Halo, because I was mourning the loss of Halo. And I'm not even joking. Logic, you could back me up on this, because I called you and I was like, I feel a certain way about this. Like I feel something from this announcement on Friday. And the brand just doesn't have that same meaning to me anymore. It's gone. Like you said Halo was the final nail in the coffin. Or it for me, it absolutely was. The brand it's so diluted now. It's so diluted that it's lost its meaning. It's just like everyone else. And when I mean everyone else, I mean like every other third-party publisher. Now, look, obviously I recognize that they are a juggernaut of a publisher because of the franchises they own. But the point is that they're a publisher. And taking that historical perspective, that history I have with them, that a lot of us have, because I see it in the live chat, right? A lot of us grew up in that Xbox culture, understood the Xbox culture, lived the Xbox culture. When that brand actually meant something, like Corey Mass said, finish the fight. That was a thing that meant something. It kept you in the ecosystem, kept you buying games. Somewhere they lost that. And to your point, Logic, it became about, we're going to do this thing. We're going to put games on every screen. Everything's an Xbox. Smart buy. Yeah, those things sound nice. But why they were saying all those things? Where was the next Halo? Not I'm saying figuratively, the next Halo, like the next franchise that had the impact, that had the same kind of cultural impact that Halo had. Where was that? And it's like they're and I think I believe this now, Logic. I feel like for me as a consumer, they're not speaking to me as a consumer. I feel like they're trying to force feed me this narrative that the industry is going this way. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys, is it really? Because your two other competitors are saying otherwise and are having a ton of success. And you guys for the last decade have been pitching this idea that the industry is going this way. It was cloud, it was, smart buy, and none of that stuff has happened. That future hasn't happened. How about executing on today so that you better position yourself for the future tomorrow? Because I don't think they've done that. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Logic. That was my short mini rant.
No, I think I just want to. Jenna Hayes in the chat is asking, when do you think Phil Spencer will retire? I was pegging him as retiring, the first year into the next console launch, so 2028. But just kind of seeing him and what's been going on this year, I will admit that it could be sooner than that, but that's kind of where my prediction had been. My prediction had been like his objective now is to get the next thing launched and moved and like the next generation started and then to hand it off to Sarah Bond. But yeah, BRAP, I mean, I think, and so this is, my problem in what's kind of going on now is, so, Sarah Bond meant, exclusives are antiquated. We see people engaging with Minecraft and Roblox, and that's the type of content we want to create, right? So that's bus stop number one. Bus stop number two is Matt Booty's. Our competition is not other gaming consoles. Our competition is now TikTok and short form video. It's bus stop number two. Bus stop number three are Satya's quotes from this week. Xbox's competition is not just other games, but also other platforms like TikTok. The company is all in on gaming, and the strategy is to put games everywhere. Most importantly, the game business model has to be where we have to invent maybe some new interactive media as well, because after all, gaming's competition is not other gaming. Gaming's competition is short form video. We want to make sure the game is enjoyed by gamers everywhere. We want to be everywhere on every platform. We want to make sure whether it's consoles, whether it's PC, whether it's mobile, whether it's cloud gaming or the TV. So we just want to make sure the games are being enjoyed by gamers everywhere. Now, people hate when I do this segue, but it's historically pertinent now more than ever. And I apologize. K-Med left. I was hoping K-Med would be here because he was around for Windows Phone, just like I was. And if you don't recognize how same these statements are from what was going on Windows Phone, then you don't get it. If you don't understand that this voice track is saying what is most important to that company is not the Xbox platform, right? But is getting that game onto other platforms. If you're missing the fact that as of now, PlayStation is more important to Xbox than Xbox is, you're making a huge whiff. And so part of the problem that I have with what's going on now, Mikey Barra put out a tweet where he said, gaming doesn't compete with short form video, it competes with time. It's different. Video games are multi-hour premium experiences that are so good you forget the sense of time. You escape reality and the challenges and the stresses of today. Short form video is what you do when you have a few minutes multiple times throughout the day. FYI, the average core gamer spends 3+ hours in the games they love on a daily basis, some 5+ hours. Now that quote that tweet at the time that I picked it up had 138,000 views, and it was at 247 responses, most of them in resistance. And everybody, all the Xbox fans are going down this path of, no, what they said is absolutely correct. My kid, they spend all the, like, I'm so tired of these arguments. This repeating of like the talking points from the corporation and these attempts to validate them on anecdotal evidence of, well, my kids do this. Well, no crap. Like, and so here's the things that I want people to really think about to really challenge this whole notion. This notion that TikTok and short form video are replacing gaming, because that's what you're not evaluating. In order for this to be true, then there has to be the notion that TikTok and short form video, YouTube video, they don't simply exist, but they are actually displacing the amount of time that goes into gaming. TikTok isn't new. Short form video on YouTube is not new. We've been podcasting for over a decade, and YouTube video has been around. And for a very long time, the mantra has been around that if you're going to do a podcast, which is it's really weird, the state of podcasting to me these days, BRAP, by the way, because when this started, the whole thing was, if you were going to do a gaming podcast, your gaming podcast needed to be less than an hour. Your format needed to be short form because that's what people consume. The presence of these video formats have not displaced gaming. And things I would challenge you to consider is, when did gaming hit its kind of tip over point where it started becoming mainstream and consumed at mass scale? I would say probably like the latter part of the PlayStation 2 generation. And it definitely started its ramp in the PS2 generation, right? We've had this conversation, BRAP, where so many non-gamers bought the PS2 because it was a great DVD drive. And DVD drives were super expensive. It was the cheapest DVD drive, in fact, on the market at the time. My first DVD player was $500 before the bottom dropped out of it.
I mean, the PlayStation 2 was the true Trojan horse. I mean, that's the reason why it sold, as you'd like to say, Logic, it sold Bonga because it was the cheapest DVD on the market at the time.
So continuing with the intellectual challenge I want people to put themselves through. So gaming hits the tip over point and starts going wide scale mass uptake, right? Now we're firmly on this trajectory where we are multi-billion dollars industry, largest entertainment industry, right? We're heading in that direction. Did cable TV go extinct because of gaming? Did the movie industry suffer some catastrophic meteor strike and totally crater its earnings because gaming was on the rise and it displaced movie watching? Like, the thing that killed cable, or has taken the fight to cable, was another TV format. The thing that has challenged television is other video formats. And so I think what you need to really consider, right, is the fact that like content is the content that challenges like content. And consider the fact that that TikTok and short form video is a much bigger, clear and present danger to network style television, to streaming services, to other things of that nature. I would say, like, the part of gaming that it threatens is the mobile gaming space, because there are two vectors that determine that challenge. That determine the priority of that challenge, right? It is modality and it is content. And what I mean by modality is, what is the disposition you put yourself in when you go to consume content? Because they are different, right? Even portable gaming has a slightly different modality than set-top gaming, right? When you pick up a handheld, you pick it up, you sit down on a couch or on a chair, right? Sometimes you lay down, sometimes people lay in bed, and you start consuming that content. I would venture to say that for the vast majority of the market, even that has handhelds, that is also not a 2, 3, 4 hour experience. When I pick up my handhelds, I play for like 30 minutes and then I put them down, maybe an hour at most, right? Because I'm holding a whole like portable PC in my hands instead of a gaming controller. It's not something that I like to do for a long amount of time. When you go to play a game, and this goes back to what we were talking about, right? You lock in. right? Yeah, you sit on a couch, right? We've had this conversation for many years, right? The difference even in gaming when you go from leaning back on the couch playing casually, right, with the kind of control, like with your elbows kind of resting like on your ribs with the controller in front of you, versus leaning forward, locked in, elbows on knees, right, eyes wide, like intensely staring at the screen, right? Those are modalities of set top box, whether it be PC or console, gaming consumption. That is not the modality you are in when you are consuming TikTok and short form video, right? Short form video, TikTok, you're idle. You typically consume a lot of it at work, right? Some of you guys who don't have monitoring applications on your laptops, right? You consume it when you're at work. You consume it when you're standing in a line. You consume it at the checkout counter at the grocery store. You are not in the same modality you are when you are consuming core gaming content. And core gaming content is an interactive medium. It is not laying back and watching TV and having things transmitted to you. And the reason people gravitate to that content is because they have something. Like I jokingly refer to it as the X gene, right? You know, we're the mutants, right? But you have something that causes you to consume that content, right? Versus passive content being conveyed and transmitted to you with people telling you the story the way they want to tell you the story. You have something in you that drives you to consume content where you are participating in a story, participating in an activity. And I would even say when you're playing like esports stuff, sports games, there's still a tapestry working, it's like weaving its way in your head where you are living and experiencing like an experience that still has a story to it, right? It's the story of your season. It's the story of you, grooming your NBA 2K athlete, right, to become a superstar, right? There's a story there still. And you gravitate to that content in a significantly different way than you gravitate to Game of Thrones, right? And you go into a different modality. Like if you ever looked at your brain scan, right, of the brain waves that are in action when you're consuming Game of Thrones versus playing Ghost of Yotai, they're radically different. And you were pursuing that stuff for reasons. And your brain waves are radically different when you're consuming TikTok and short form video. And there's something innately woven, right? People who have studied the science woven into us about things that we addict ourselves to. And so the brain chemistry that causes you to seek out that content is not the same. And at a biological level, those formats actually don't compete with each other directly head to head. Now we live in a world of kind of like where we're all approaching the slope, like the mudslide to the world of Wall-E, right? Where an idiocracy, where there are drones who just sit scrolling on their phone all day, and that's all they want to do. And when they come home, they sit down on the couch when other people would watch TV, and they like so that's out there also. But we're also in a world where, and this goes back to my point of like how the rise of gaming didn't dismantle the cable industry. Right, the cable industry was actually like where it is taking the hits from is it's taking the hits from Netflix and everybody going to streaming. It wasn't dismantled by gaming. Because the other thing that like amazingly people seem to choose to ignore is that the population is growing, we're getting more people right on the planet. So what you would actually need to look at to make a convincing argument that you needed to compete against TikTok and short form video is you would actually need to look at the consumption hours, and you would actually need to tell me that the gross number of hours of gaming content consumption are decreasing while concurrently the gross hours of TikTok consumption and short form video consumption are increasing. And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Yes, we are in an attention based economy. Yes, we do have a thing, right, by the fact that all content, particularly in the nerd realm, is widely available. It's easy. I don't have to move an inch right now from this desk to watch YouTube video, pull down a comic book, get a sci-fi novel, get access to a game, right, or watch the Snyder Cut. right? That's all readily available at my fingertip via like 8 different devices, right? But that doesn't marry itself to the notion that like gaming needs to entirely change in order for us to be competitive. It's changing for Xbox, but it doesn't mean that that's a global truism.
Although Xbox would like to frame it that way.
Yes,
and that's part of the issue that I have with them. And I think what ends up happening, Logic, is that when people hear this goes back to some of the arguments that we hear on this show sometimes in the chat, or we see it on social media. The kids, right? Our kids are on TikTok, kids are on social media, they're on Facebook, they're on Twitter. They're not interested in playing video games, or if they play video games, they're going to play on mobile. They're going to play the black hole games. The Fortnites, the Roblox. But we never, and I think you maybe you brought this up last week, but we never the question is never, do their habits change as they get older? This is why I have that running joke. My kids eat McDonald's, therefore they're going to be eating McDonald's when they're adults. But it begs the question. I mean, will their consumption habits change? Probably, right? Kids will get older. I mean, I again, this is anecdotal, but I see it with my kids. Yes. Do they play Roblox? Absolutely. Do they play Roblox with their friends? Yes. But my 11-year-old's watching me play Ghost of Yotei, and he's like, I want to play that. That looks really cool. I remember I asked, we had Doc Dark on a couple weeks ago, and remember he asked his son, hey, are you going to be playing Roblox when you're 30? He's like, no, that'd be weird. But so I'm not entirely buying this idea, Logic, that this is the absolute future. I think what it does represent, though, and what I would agree with, is that, yeah, they are different consumers now. You've talked about this on this show, the stratification of the gaming industry, and that there's different slices of the pie now, different verticals. That I do agree with the idea that they are, because of technology, there is content now that appeals to a different consumer that plays video games. Not all consumers are built the same. Video game consumers, I should say. That's what I'm trying to say. So I don't necessarily buy this idea that, that we're all going to be, that the kids aren't going to, and we talked about the ESA survey, right? Where we see millennials and not millennials, was it Gen Z, Gen Alpha?
Yeah.
They're playing on PC and console more than we are, than millennials and Gen X.
Which is not true.
What's that? What's not true, Logic?
That the younger generations are playing on consoles and PC less.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point. Yeah, that they're playing on consoles and PC more than we are. So what that has to mean something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so when I think about that, Logic, and I think about what you just said, and I think about Sarah Bond's messaging, I'm like, again, this is why I don't trust them. I find it to be very disingenuous now. In light of data, in light of the surveys that we've seen, the opposite is happening. We're seeing the opposite. They're saying one thing, but the data shows something else. So the other thing that I'm sorry, Lodge, you want to I want to go back to something Satya said, but did you have anything else to add on?
No, I think
yeah.
Go ahead and go with the thing Satya said, and then I think that will be a good ramp to what does the future of Xbox content look like.
Yeah, I thought this was telling to me. This part right here where he says, remember, the biggest gaming business is the Windows business. And of course, Steam has built a massive marketplace on top of it and done a very successful job of it. So to us, the way we're thinking about gaming is, first of all, now we're the largest publisher after the after the Activision acquisition. So therefore, we want to be a fantastic publisher. Similar approach to what we did with Office. Oh my gosh, that just made me when I heard him say Office, I'm like, we're going to be everywhere at every platform. Office. We want to make sure whether it's consoles, whether it's PC, whether it's mobile, whether it's cloud gaming or the TV, we just want to make sure the games are being enjoyed by gamers everywhere. That's what. There you go, Office. So I think what was interesting about this particular quote, Logic, the big thing that stood out to me was no mention of Xbox. The biggest gaming business is the Windows business, the PC. So I don't think that if I go back to that rumor that Xbox was not making hardware, it seems to be that they're not going to make traditional console hardware anymore. And that the Xbox as we know it is next generation is done. That this thing in fact is going to be a PC in small, like in a small form factor PC, whatever, hybrid, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. And I mean, I've kind of floated this theory to you before, like and maybe this delves a little bit into like why my contention now is that Xbox is not.
Logic, I got to interrupt you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have to do the YouTube thing real quick. Please hit that like button. Helps the channel, helps people find the channel. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Logic.
Yeah, no, it says a thing when we've got 105 people watching and only 6 likes. So I know a lot of people, a lot of you guys do likes, once the VOD posts, and that is absolutely helpful. But now I almost forget where I was going. But this delves into why my current, one of my current running theories is I just don't think Xbox is really relevant, right, as a gaming conversational topic. And that's not a statement on content, but like it's like the notion, it's again really weird to me. It's really weird to me that there's 30 million gamers on the Xbox, there's 150 million gamers on Nintendo, there's 130 million gamers on PlayStation, right? There's the PC numbers can get really wackadoodle. I've been trying to like level set. I just give them credit for being the same number as Nintendo, right? Yes, there's way more than that, but you start getting into data that shows like a lot of those people are the people who are playing Minesweeper and Solitaire, and they should, like, I'm talking about paying customers, and I usually base that on Steam, and I usually base that, right, because Steam is 70 to 85% of the market, right? So let's just call it 150 million, right, customers on Steam, 200 million if you want to give it more. Like, it's super strange to me that there is this army of people on Twitter that says, I'm going to take the company that has saturated 10% of the market and run with, they know where gaming is going. Right? That literally makes kind of no sense to me. Going back to this TikTok thing and short form video thing, rough estimate is there were 880 billion hours of combined TikTok and YouTube video consumed last year. There were 1.3 trillion hours of games played last year. And so, just like I said about this whole running around and saying, Roblox and Minecraft are the future. Roblox and Minecraft are sub $6 billion of revenue in a $95 to $100 billion industry. I don't know why people are running around saying that this 5 to 6% rate of industry revenue is the future. It has a long way to go before it does that. I will say the same thing about this delta between TikTok and short form video and gaming hours. There's a significant amount of way to go, right, to get there. I think the reality, let's also not discount that a lot of these TikTok short form video content is consumed, and I'm not saying it's good, it's actually a horrible habit amongst the human populace, but is being consumed in parallel with other content. Right? And that's kind of my point of modality, this is typically not stuff that you consume when you are dedicated, right, to content consumption. Right? It's typically when you're in a modality where you couldn't play a game, or you couldn't even hyper focus necessarily on a Game of Thrones. So you're doing it at these alternative times where you're not losing out on the opportunity cost of playing a video game anyway. So the notion that they're competing head to head is just a fallacy and just incorrect. But I think the notion, right, that notion and things that Satya said should be telling you some things about where gaming is going.
Well, for
Where
them,
Xbox is going with gaming.
yeah, I was
Sorry.
just saying, yeah. Where gaming's going for them, and I think that's important to note because a lot of the conversation that I see is that no, they're actually, they're playing 3D chess or whatever it is. That's the saying that I've been reading online, and that they're positioning themselves or they're ahead of the future, or I'm sorry, this is the future of gaming, right? And I think what this says to me, especially the Windows is a business. It's the biggest gaming business. No mention of Xbox. To me, this is like, look, like it doesn't get any clearer than that for the CEO of Microsoft that they're done with Xbox. They're done. I would imagine at some point, Logic, that Xbox probably is a brand. I wouldn't surprise me. The name gets dropped and it just becomes Microsoft Gaming. Like that wouldn't shock me that wouldn't shock me at all.
No, I mean, I think they'll keep it along as branding, but I mean, I think for me, I think the difference is Xbox is no longer a platform, right? We still like we've the they've tried to manipulate the language to refer to Xbox now as a platform, somewhat, as a brand. And when I say they, not just them, but the people who agree with them. But it's really not. To me, it's what I'm starting to refer to as a fabric, which is a term that we utilize in IT and with specific reference to the cloud. And in some cases, when we talk about a a mesh of an environment that can stretch across multiple platforms. And I think that's really what you're talking about when you talk about Xbox, right? Because they're not just going to be on a piece of hardware. They're going to be content, but there's also going to be hooks into things that unify that fabric, but that you'll see that fabric stretch um, across cloud, across, as they talk about televisions, right? Fabric that isn't really theirs. Or I'm sorry, platforms and environments that aren't really theirs. And so that's why I start to refer to it more as a fabric. It would still be a platform if the entirety of the thing was hosted on Azure, but I think they are becoming so atomized in how far they're trying to spread things that even that won't necessarily hold true. When does are you're okay moving on to kind of talk about kind of where the future of Xbox content is going to wind up?
Yeah. Let's go ahead. Let me grab the super chat here real quick. Otacon also with a $5 super chat says, my poor parents had to feed 12 boys with heavy ass CRT TVs everywhere. LAN party, Halo 1, 2, and 3 for years and years. I was the biggest Xbox fan long ago. Thank you for that super chat, Otacon Oslet. Go ahead, Logic. So where do you see Logic? Where do you see Xbox going?
So I want to combine a little bit of like what's going on with them with some other things going on with the $1 trillion club, and this goes to the blog post that I wrote earlier today. So this week we had Amazon do a layoff of 14,000 people, significant hits to the gaming division, significant shift in strategy of what the gaming division is going to be doing. One of the statements from former Prime Gaming VP Ethan Evans, and this is out of a PC Gamer article, that he mentioned earlier this year is we assume that size and visibility would be enough to attract customers, but we underestimated the power of existing user habits. We never validated our core assumptions before investing heavily in solutions. The truth is that gamers already had the solution to their problems, and they weren't going to switch platforms just because a new one was available. Amazon, member of the $1 trillion club, similar business structure in some ways to Microsoft, similar strategic vectors in some ways to Microsoft. They have points where that diverges, but they do have points of similarity. And here's what Amazon is doing, mentioning a lot of things which are also applicable to Xbox. Xbox has assumed that size and visibility will be enough to attract more customers to its fabric. But I think, and now I'm paraphrasing and kind of taking this answer, but I think they've underestimated the power of existing user habits, but also the habits that have been formulated because the content that new users coming into the space want. Because I don't think that new users coming into the space want Xbox content. I think they want PlayStation and Nintendo content. I think that's why they buy PlayStation and Nintendo consoles. I then question, right, this next piece. We never validated our core assumptions before investing heavily in solutions. Microsoft has invested very heavily to the tune of north of $100 billion in aggregating this Death Star of a production pipeline formulated by its studios that it has. And where we have concerns, right, where we bring up things where like we're hearing the marketing voice track and the strategic voice track of Microsoft, and I'm going, I don't know that passes the smell test. The problem that we're bringing up, because people always say it's a multi-trillion-dollar company, they have tons of data, they know more than you guys know. Sure, that's fine. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to voice my opinion. My opinion and the concern I have is that when they say, here are the insights that we've gained, and these are the reasons why we're doing a thing. When I hear that and I say, I'm worried that you're proceeding from a false premise, that's where we start getting into predictions of, I don't know that this is going to work out. Right? Because I don't know that your core assumptions have been validated. I just walk through a dissertation of why I don't think they're actually competing against TikTok and short form video in the way that they think they are. The truth is that gamers already had solutions to their problems. Gamers already have consoles. Consoles already exist. There are a relatively low price to get started with high fidelity gaming. So tell me how you're changing the pattern. Matt Booty's statement earlier this week that gamers don't care about the hardware that they play games on. I have never heard something so idiotic and ludicrous. Literally, we spend core parts of our lives, of the careers we go into, in the effort, not saying that this makes us good, not saying this makes us good Christians, I'll throw that into it, in the pursuit of material gains so that we can afford to buy consoles, so we can afford to buy $2,000 GPUs. Like, what? People don't care about the hardware that they play games on? Are you stupid? The truth is that gamers already have solutions to their problems. They're not going to switch and come back to Xbox Fabric just because a new one is made available. Just because of Game Pass. Out of those 300 plus million numbers of gamers that I talked about earlier, only 10% of them have gone to Game Pass. Just because it's available. Right? What content is Amazon keeping around? They are keeping around an AI-generated courtroom reality show type game that features Snoop Dogg. So where do I think Xbox content is going? Where I think Xbox content is going is, and this is the epiphany that I had the other day, you look at who makes, okay, my competition is TikTok short form video, which is realize and understand that creators make that content at low to no cost. Doesn't take anything. You can use the phone that you already have paid for, right? Maybe you add a wireless microphone and a selfie stick, right? But now you're saying that you're competing against people who have no investment that they have to make, or a very low investment to make, to the tune of like $100, right, for the production value that they make their content of. So what do you think? And one of Satya's comments was about high margin. What type of content do you think that means Xbox thinks they need to make to compete? They also need to go after low cost, no cost type of content to go head to head with TikTok and short form video that you crank out frequently. That's low complexity, low production value, high margin. What content looks like that? I think one of the greatest examples of content that can be easily monetized. I think one of the greatest examples of that content is the MiHoYo verse, Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, Zenless Zone Zero. I think what you are going to see is you are going to see Microsoft. I also think they're going to try and do another acquisition, and I think they're going to try and put that acquisition in motion to close before the Trump administration potentially gets out of office, or before there's that risk. So I would say at the latest, look for 18 to 24 months before this administration ends for Microsoft to extend another offer for an acquisition. And I think what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and pad their pool of IP with IPs, mascots, characters that will facilitate the strategy. But I think the strategy you're going to see from a content perspective, because Sarah Bond has said the content they're interested in making, right, is live service like content. So I think what you're going to see is you're going to see Master Chief, Gears of War, Forza. I think a Forza model that you're going to see is you're going to see a Forza model that, and they tried this before and it failed. I think you're going to see the Forza 6 or 7 model where there's going to be a free to play racing game that gives you 10 to 12, 20 cars up front. And then with the remainder of the car, right? Understand that like Forza Horizon has like something like in excess of like 100 or 300 cars or something like that. I think all of that is going to get pulled back behind the curtain and it's going to get monetized. I think you're going to get a free to play Forza game, Forza Horizon game that gives you, like I said, 10, 12, 20 cars. And then everything after that is monetized. I think you're going to see these great IPs that have resonated with you as like these childhood things that you've fallen in love with. I think what you're going to see is a heavily westernized version of a Honkai Star Rail, right? Of a Genshin Impact, of a Zenless Zone Zero, or whatever the heck it's called, right?
And those games, by the way, those games translate very well on multiple devices like mobile, and live on those devices. But I'm sorry, go ahead, Logic.
No, you're exactly right. In the end, that allows you, right? And remember, this goes hand in hand with all the things that I've said before, right? Unreal Engine workforce, where you can easily lop off your most senior people who are your most highly paid people, because the person who's going to fill that gap is some other person trained in Unreal Engine.
Mm-hmm.
And that allows you to
and Nate says, please after, the wrong guy. And Nate says, please after Forza 6.
Yeah, no, but that's like what I would be gearing myself up for is look at the things that are on the roadmap, because Great Scott, the Xbox guys always talk about the roadmap, right? They never talk about the things that have fallen off the roadmap from all the cancellations and studio closures. Look at the things that you're getting, and I would start anticipating that the thing that comes after that these are maybe the last of those that you're going to see, and the things that come after that are a different thing. I guarantee you that where Halo's being introduced on PlayStation 5, but the next thing that comes after PlayStation or soon thereafter is going to be some type of multiplayer Genshin Impactification sized thing, right? That is a universe, that is a world that you go and live in, that puts you on the grind, and that is heavily monetized.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're getting a Forza Horizon next year, but I would anticipate that after that, right, the next Forza thing you get is going to be a thing that aligns to the model that I said before.
And Logic, I would imagine if your goal, right, is to maintain this high margin business, right, 30%, and you're looking to leverage the Windows platform, and Windows exists to Satya's point. I mean, Satya said, he's like, Windows is everywhere. We want to, I think this is very telling. People should pay attention to this when he says, what do you say? We want to be a fantastic publisher. Similar approach to what we did with Office. So think about that for just like, where did Office lives everywhere now? And the kind of content strategy that you're talking about, Logic, to me makes sense. And I'd be curious to let me know in the live chat too what everyone thinks, what you guys think, and then the comment section below. It's sort of like what Satya's saying here about Windows and what you're describing. Like I don't think you can do that with the quote unquote traditional model of publishing of maybe putting out AAA games, the games that aren't solely, games that are not games as a service, or games that you mentioned like Genshin Impact, which exists on mobile. You can play it on your tablet, you can play it on your PlayStation, you can play it on an Xbox, you can play it on PC, right? You don't have to worry about $100, $200 million AAA budgets. These things can exist on multiple devices, and then not only can they exist, but you can actually monetize and keep that person engaged in that ecosystem where you have the opportunity to basically monetize them wherever they go. And I would imagine that's how you get to the 30% margin.
Yeah. And then your type of content that you make, right, is content where they can jump in, right, for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, grind, right, and contribute towards their overall, like, living continuity. I mean, MiHoYo made $5.6 billion in 2023 off the strength of 5,000 employees.
Yeah,
the Xbox division number is close to 20,000.
Yeah, Nate says, yeah, that would suck. But yeah, MiHoYo is the content leader there, make billions and cost nothing with a game that lives on all devices. I mean, I think, again, I go back to the 30% profit margin. I think that's, hold on, I'm just trying to read I'm going to bring this comment at Valnor says it's going to be brutal for them. I agree. They want to hit major live service, but gamers don't want Windows. They will pay to play for a console or Steam OS. So being cool next hit will be hard. I think they're not going for that gamer anymore though, of Leonard, because to Logic's point, I think that's a different type of gamer. I don't know if you specifically said that, Logic, but my interpretation of what you're saying is that's a different type of consumer. But I do think on the back end though, they'll have Game Pass. They'll have their catalog of console experiences and PC experiences, right? But I don't see them investing and releasing new IP. I don't see them investing in a new AAA IP. Maybe a smaller indie title, maybe AA. But I think, and if you're to believe what Hip Hop Gamer said recently, which I tend to believe many things that he puts out there when he says these things. But he said something about like the Xbox 360, and I forget something to effect like they're going to go back to the best generation of Xbox games, 360. And again, I'm totally paraphrasing, but that led me to believe that they're going to go back and probably, if Halo's any indicator, probably go back to their treasure chest of IP, popular IP that were released on the 360, and maybe do remakes of those, and then throw those games into Game Pass.
Yeah, yes, like where it makes sense, for monetization, right? Either because it keeps people anchored to Game Pass, or it introduces a franchise onto another platform. But I will also see, or where it is the ramp into, again.
By the way, that's my point about the remakes, is that feeding into Game Pass and continue to monetize in Game Pass, keeping people inside Game Pass, because you have these 30 million subscribers. You don't want to lose those subscribers, right? So you need to do something to keep them locked into that ecosystem.
Yeah, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that could be part of the strategy, but I think eventually where Game Pass is going to go is you're going to get these MiHoYo like games that are going to become a stable of games that'll be 12, 15 titles, and your Game Pass subscription will be the thing that allows you access to all of those.
Oh, man, I'm not it.
I don't.
That's not for me.
I think what I predict, and I'm predicting this based on what they've said, right? So again, what I'm going to get is, oh, that's not what they said. That's not what they meant. No, listen to what they said and listen to where they said it makes sense for them to invest. What I think Game Pass is going to become it's going to become a stable of live service games, right? And that's what you're and it's and mix your legacy content in with that, right? But they've kind of already said it, right? Like, hey, your Game Pass subscription gets you access to World of Warcraft, right? So I think that's where it's headed. And what you're going to see is you're going to wind up seeing those IPs converted into MiHoYo universe type things where they can monetize you on loot boxes, short, quick content, episodic content. I think you're just going to see the drifting away from the notion of, here's a title, you get it every 3 to 5 years in the IP that you want. I think you're going to get a IP MiHoYoverse type game, and then you can just live in that game. And the downside of the Gears of War will become, yeah, sure, it's about combat, but it's also going to be like a wardrobe area where you can go to a store and buy ootsie cutesy outfits for your gear, right? And play Barbie doll with your gear to make up and give them a different appearance. Maybe you'll also be able to buy weapons too, because that'll be cool. But like it's going to be a bunch of skins. Now, where I do agree with Valinor is I say, okay, now this is why I think this is not going to work, because while it's going to maybe create content that some people are going to engage in, again, the people they've been able to capture to this point is 10% of the market. I don't think this type of content is going to resonate at scale with the rest of the market, and you're going to wind up seeing people continuing to buy games and systems and hardware and accessories and stay on Nintendo and stay on PlayStation.
But I would imagine they would meet them there with some of their, at that point, I would call legacy IP, right? Like the Call of Duties.
Yeah, for the purpose of introducing them to this MiHoYoverse type content.
Yeah.
Now I think some of your current games as a service, right, are going to continue to exist. World of Warcraft will continue to exist on PC. Call of Duty will continue to exist on other places, and Call of Duty already sucks all the air out of the room anyway, right? Yeah, but I just think the like my belief is when you see Clockwork Revolution come out from In Exile, that's probably the last In Exile game that you're going to see.
Logic, that wouldn't surprise me.
Right after that, what I would expect,
that's fair.
If In Exile doesn't get closed, you will see them become a support studio for this type of content.
Yeah. Yeah, Logic, I got to be honest with you, not something I'd be interested in. But for them, it makes sense if they went that direction that you think they might go. They might go in.
Oh, it totally make it.
Yeah, because
if you proceed from the false premise, right, that you're competing against TikTok and short form video, that is what you do.
Oh, 110%. And if you're saying that you're meeting gamers where they are, and you need to hit that 30%, profit margin, and you want to, and I never forget what Amy the Hood said about we're going to be a software duty subscription base. What did she say?
No, that's exactly it.
Yeah. So that's how you do that. That's how you accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely assuredly. So, yay, verily, I could be wrong, but what I will say is,
Yeah. But by the way, Logic, let's just say that this is not. We're not saying this is like Logic's not saying, because there's going to be people that are, oh, like, he's wrong. No, he's throwing out a theory based on what Sarah Bonner said, their current pivot, what Matt Booty said, and what Satya just recently said about, they want to treat this like they would take a similar approach to what they've done with Windows or with Office, Microsoft Office.
Yeah, but what I will say is, what you absolutely don't do is you absolutely don't have a bunch of single player narrative type games at budgets of, in excess of $100 million.
No, that's not. They're not going to do that.
Yeah, that you deploy to platforms that nobody buys.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you, I don't see them doing that. I just don't. I think it takes up too much time. I think they want to get these things out quickly. I think that the idea of spending, $100 million, $200 million on a game for them probably doesn't make sense, considering these aggressive profit margins that the business needs to hit. And the fact that, now they're at some point, and I do think that I think this Xbox PC hardware, whatever you want to call it, even if it's first party, I think this is the last time that we see them releasing any kind of first party hardware. I think moving forward, it's just going to be up to third party OEMs to release Xbox hardware.
Yeah, Nate Dogg in the chat is saying now they'll put inXile on Fallout. I think BGS, Obsidian, and inXile all are. Yeah, you're not disagreeing with me, Nate Dogg. Like, I think they will too, but like, if the next Fallout is a single player 40+ hour campaign, that will
They already
probably
have a Fallout live service game. So
yeah, they have Fallout 76, but I mean, I don't think. I mean, my feeling is Fallout 76 isn't like. I think they will move Fallout back to a live service type game and probably retire a pull down in 76, but I don't think 76 is it. I like the after this one, the next Fallout will be an Unreal Engine, and it'll be a live service game.
Let me grab this super chat here, Logic. Andy Hart with the $5 pound says, "Good morning, gentlemen. And new to PC, what do you say? New to PC work colleague said, why not get a Steam Deck? See if I like it. So ordered original LCD model thoughts. So he wants to know what thoughts are. I actually don't own the Steam Deck, so I can't comment on the Steam Deck, but I believe you do, Logic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to get in, to experiment. I think your learning curve is going to be limited, right? Because you're not really exposing yourself to really the heart of PC. You're not building. You're not buying a pre-built. I think to get in at low cost, absolutely, that's a good approach. And then once you get exposed to some of the content there and kind of the different the increased variety of titles that are there, you can consider whether or not you want to go in harder in the paint and build or do a DIY. I will say, you get that experience, which is going to be closer to a console experience and a PC experience. Just give yourself some time to consider before you say, well, that's not really what I want, just because like I think the content you'll be exposed to may be a little limited, just in terms of like the Steam Deck control interface, right? It's like there's a lot of content that you're probably not going to want to play and not get exposed to. That if you were on a more traditional, even laptop, right, you might get to. So it might be good to do not only the Steam Deck, but also, I don't know, like spend some hours at like a cyber cafe with just like a standard PC, or find a friend and use their PC, and just kind of round out your Steam Deck exposure with exposure to additional content, right, and modalities that are available in the PC space.
Yeah. Nate Dogg says that he heard KSanto say they were at 22% margins earlier today. I don't think I haven't seen any reporting that says Xbox is at 22%. There was reporting that industry, and I don't even know how accurate this is. There was a report that like industry standard was like 17 to 22, but I haven't seen anything reported that Xbox is at a 22%.
I've done this math. There's some Xbox content creator who's running around claiming that they're already at their 30% margin. That's just idiotic. ATVI was at 24% margins before the acquisition. Prior to the acquisition, Xbox was at single-digit profit margins. And so what makes mathematical sense is that you put those two business units together, you incur significantly increased cost, right, in terms of overhead and in terms of fringe. And what makes sense is that they're running at 13 to 14% margin, maybe 12 to 14% margin. You also take off of that all of the hits that they have incurred for at least the first 5 quarters of the absorption of ATVI, which numbered at $1.5 billion and was taken as a direct hit to profit. So unless there is an SEC filed statement that tells me that they're at 22% margin, that does not pass the smell test to me.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Logic. Yeah, I haven't seen that they're already at 30%. I don't know who's running around with that.
No, that was on a sensationalist podcast where they're not concerned about truth at all, but they just try and make reality show type yelling and screaming at each other for clicks.
Oh my goodness. Marsh says KSI said Microsoft they did it before, not that it was right now. That's what he meant from what he said on Boom Show earlier.
So what I will say and where I will leave it is I don't know what objective data they're pointing to. I have mapped out the source of my math. You look at what ATVI's profit margins were prior to the acquisition closing. You combine that with what Xbox's profit margin was from the FTC hearing prior to that closing, right? You then intermix them, dilute it, and then down market for the losses that they have reported in SEC filed earnings reports, in investor statements. I'm not dealing with conjecture and speculation and guessing and insider information, maybe, right? I'm talking about what is objectively available as evidentiary proof of what the expectation and calculations on what the expectation of that profit margin intermix is.
Yeah, I don't even know if they've ever been at 22% profit margins. As long as I've been following their financials, I can't recall a time where they've ever been at 22%.
I can't retire. I mean, first of all, let's there's, as far as I know, there's
the only person I could.
There's never been a time that they've reported their financials. That's my big problem. They have never been a reportable operating segment. They have always reported as a subset of an operating segment, and that accuracy and precision of financial information has always been very diluted.
Yeah.
And they have made statements in the past where they've said, they've made several statements in the past where, right, the outlook on profitability of the Xbox division has always been questionable at the aggregate.
Nate Dogg says baby 360 era. Yeah, I don't know about that either.
Yeah, because they took a hit on the red ring of death.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say they spent billions on the red ring of death. So, that doesn't go away. You have to account for that in the books. So, I don't. Yeah, that's going to eat into your profit margins.
And again, like if even if I'll even entertain the notion, right? Profit margin's great. Like if you want to believe that they're at 22 or 25%, great. they've sold enough consoles to occupy 10%, right? Sub 10% of the console gaming market. They're not making content that is widely demanded. Their games haven't garnered a bunch of awards.
Well, except for Call of Duty, but go ahead. And Minecraft.
Awards.
No, I'm saying you said widely. They're not widely demanded. I said Call of Duty.
Yeah. I'm talking about the entirety of the portfolio, right? Not individual titles.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
But like at aggregate, right, the stuff that they put out isn't widely consumed. So again, my point of this is, what is the relevance of Xbox? I think it's much less than we give it credit for. And then for you as a personal gamer, like, is that what you want? Right. And I think a lot of us, I would say, again, the vast majority of us, given what the market metrics are indicating that it's not really content that we necessarily want. And the strategic content direction that's been put out this week sounds like it's heading in a direction of, not things that we want.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not what I want,
Yeah, and they talk. Indiana Jones did get like some awards, right? But and so my my point is, but they're not often in the Game of the Year conversation, except when people force them to, or people are being salty about not being nominated for awards, right? So yeah, they do get some category things, like Call of Duty gets audio every now and then. But my point is that, like, they're not in the conversation about these big creative properties. I mean, the challenge question that I asked, like, BRAP earlier in the week, is like, when was the last Xbox published game that won an award or was heavily in the conversation for a greatly delivered voiceover performance, right, or mocap performance, or was in the discussion for a great narrative or a great script? And I don't remember any Xbox title that's really been in that conversation in recent years, and really since Phil Spencer took over. I mean, there might be some in there, like, that you can count on one hand, but I don't remember.
Yeah, I honestly, Logic, I can't really think of any, to be honest with you. I mean, you'd have to go back to 360 generation, Gears of War.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'd have to
like,
look.
Yeah. I mean, and it's not just Game of the Year, by the way. It's just it's if you go back to, if you were on the original Xbox, you remember Halo, when Halo released, it launched. It fundamentally changed the way games or shooters were designed for consoles, right?
I mean, it was the first effectively delivered shooter on console. Before
Absolutely.
that, I would claim that all of them were dog poop.
Yeah. So but it had cultural relevance in gaming,
And
so I can't think of I mean, and I'm not saying that they haven't released any good games. I mean, you've heard me on the show that this has been the best year of Game Pass. But they haven't had that impact, that game that just resonates the way Halo did, or the way Gears did. They just haven't had that.
Yeah, Magnestar says, good point. Magnestar wasn't heavily. Yes, so she won. I think she won a number of awards for best. Yeah. So again, I'm not saying zero, but this is, now we're leaning into, like, my hypothesis that Xbox as a creative outlet, as a gaming business, is really not as relevant as we ascribe, based simply on their size. So yes, Hellblade 2 actress won a few awards. Somebody said something else in here. I thought Indiana Jones definitely won some technical awards, I believe. Playground has definitely won an award for best racing game. Probably a couple times. But again, what I'm getting to, right? When you hear that voice track, right? You hear it's a few games scattered across onesie twosie categories, right? It is not this conversation that we have with Nintendo, where their IPs and their games come up for awards multiple times, where they have franchises that are award-winning franchises that have garnered awards, where PlayStation has franchises that have garnered awards that are frequently in the conversation of nominations. And again, this isn't my point of saying PlayStation, me Grimlock, PlayStation, Nintendo better, right?
Yeah, it's not what we're doing here.
This is what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to tease out insights based on where we see uptake, where we see critical acclaim, and ask the question, right? Because part of my bother to a certain extent is like Xbox gets a ton of volume, right? And a ton of, yelling and screaming and kicking and back and forth about it. And I'm like, I don't really know that they really occupy that space on the creative landscape, or on the business landscape. Now, I would expect the pushback, which I'm surprised I haven't seen yet, is okay, but they do make $24.5 billion, and between them and PlayStation, earn half of the revenue in the console space, in the combined console PC gaming space annually. So there is something to be said about that. But
no, I mean they're absolutely a publishing juggernaut.
But I would challenge us on that notion because Tencent, I think, makes more than both of them.
Yeah, I think Tencent's number one.
But we don't have conversations every week about Tencent or what Tencent's doing or what Tencent's strategy is or about how Tencent is going to compete against TikTok and short form video. Right? So again, I'm challenging this notion of, not from a content perspective of covering the topic, but from a I think people need to grasp that Xbox is not as big a deal to gamers potentially as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And Nate Doug, your comments. No, we all want console war. Microsoft chicken out, and I'm not sure if that's a sarcastic. I'm not. So where I say we as consumers want a console war, I don't really mean console war because I've always felt that's really a silly label. But there is an impact to the market of when we have competitors not going head to head, and not just Xbox, because the state of the market is that tie my whole thing of where Xbox content is going and where there really exists for relevance. They're kind of really backing out, right, of that competitive landscape. And PlayStation and Nintendo have essentially divvied that market up high-low. So at the end of the day, the consumers who are in the space, stand to suffer and get less of the things that we want because the market has been that way. I'm glad Enate's in the chat, because as a PC gamer, Enate, who's been around a very long time, knows what I'm talking about when I then walk that analog over to what we've seen in the GPU space. You go back to the 90s, we had Diamond, S3, who made the Savage, right, engine. We had Voodoo, who gave us Glide. We had more competitors in the GPU space, and then in the early 2000s, it became just, once AMD bought ATI, right, it became just AMD and just NVIDIA. And this competitive landscape and what we have as consumers have gotten has absolutely suffered. We've suffered years of where NVIDIA has been the honey badger and just doesn't give a shit. Doesn't really try and improve its technology because AMD is not mounting up a challenge. We've had years where AMD has said, hey, we're not going to, which is exactly what's going on with PlayStation and Nintendo now. AMD said, yeah, we're not going to challenge the next cycle. We're not going to challenge the high end of the GPU market. We're just going to go mid and low. What does that result in? That results in the market being divvied up, right? And the high end competitor having free reign to choose to either advance the technology or not, or if they do advance the technology, charge whatever they want for it. Hence, $2,000 GPUs, right? So my point of this is that, when these competitors aren't going head to head, there is an impact to that.
Yeah.
And then Nate, your other comment, the stories are pretty cheesy, but I still yes, and this is part of my point too. If you love the games, right? Don't Like, there shouldn't be, going back to BRAP's misinformation, disinformation point, which is the other thing that grinds my gears. I'm like, we have lots of content creators putting out misinformation, disinformation about the state of the business, pointing out speculative things about profit margins, right, or whatever. Maybe TK has some insider information where he makes that, can make that claim, right? But I still got the other Xbox content creator who's claiming that they're already at their 30% margins based on nothing, as far as I can tell, right? There's people putting information like that out because they're trying to raise Xbox up to be equal. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. Like, just let people love the platform and love the games, love the fabric. Like, if people are all in on Xbox, let them be all in on Xbox. They shouldn't be supporting that love with false information. In the absence of that information, in the absence of good news, and we've had a crap ton of Xbox bad news for the last 2 months, right? Let's stop manufacturing stuff. Let's stop Sherlocking job recs on the SIE career website and making a big kerfuffle on social media that it means something when it doesn't. And then put that in conjunction with the fact that you have Xbox guys saying, hey, we should just be talking about the games. Please, for Christ's sake, for Pete's sake, just talk about the games then. Because in this slew of 2 weeks, I haven't heard anyone other than us, quite frankly, do a deep dive on Keeper.
Yeah, we had a great conversation with Umbra, the Keeper. Ninja Gaiden's also out. We talked about that.
Yeah, Nate, I absolutely agree with you. I think a real console war would cause Sony to be more experimental. I mean, PlayStation has stepped away from a lot of the kind of experimental titles that it used to do. It has taken Media Molecule.
Yeah.
Off
let me
nights.
just say that I have been disappointed, even though I love Ghosts of Yotei. I think Nate Dogg brings up a great point. They're experimental. Some of the more experimental like if talk. The great thing about the PlayStation 4 generation and PS3 generation is that PlayStation would make these experimental games and they that would complement their big AAA games. And now it's just AAA games, right? I mean, you still get some of the smaller stuff. You see what they're doing with Housemarque. Forget the studio behind Astrobot.
Team Asobo.
Team Asobo, thank you.
Let me go look it up. I constantly get them mixed up with the Microsoft Flight Simulator team. Their names are so similar.
Yeah, but I'll say this. Look, Asobi, it's Team Asobi. So I've been disappointed with the output that PlayStation's put out this generation from their first party. I want more of it, but PlayStation set that expectation with me. They set that bar high, and maybe some of that is because of them. Maybe that live service push detracted some of their studios from working on first party stuff. But I think that's with at least in my opinion, logic, an area improvement for them. And where they probably, even though they put out great content, they haven't, I don't think, put out as much content as frequently as they did during the PlayStation 4 generation, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not at scale and it's not at volume.
Yeah, exactly. But they also haven't done some of the fan service stuff, the fan friendly service stuff that they did during the PlayStation 4 generation. They've kind of kept quiet. I don't like that.
Now, what I do to tie this back to my earlier rant, that's also because of the lack of competition. Right? I mean, we got the great PlayStation franchises that we have now because they was getting their ass whooped.
Yeah, got punched in the face
by the 360.
Yeah, 110%. Born out of that competition was Uncharted, The Last of Us. And then you look at the PlayStation 4 generation. I mean, like, I don't know. as I play Ghost of Yote, I'm like, okay, when I wrap up Ghost of Yote, then what? Look, Brap plays the bangers, the goaties.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say, look, I'm not trying to like shame anyone, but like I definitely struggle to understand. And again, maybe it's just because my perspective is in its own echo chamber. I do really struggle to understand how, as a gamer, you'd be satisfied on any one platform this generation. I mean, I know those people exist.
PC.
I mean, Nate and I have a mutual toast who constantly talks about how she's only on PlayStation, and so maybe that is there. I know.
I
For
mean,
me personally, my own personal taste, like I wouldn't have been okay being this generation solely on PlayStation. Maybe I would have adjusted, right, by downscaling like my expectations. But just in terms of like the breadth of content, right, that I'd be looking for, um, I feel like overall, like the total library that PlayStation has provided has been less, in just in terms of variance, right, and volume than they did last generation. And I get it, like production production times and schedules are increasing, but I think the conversation we had last time is we had this whole like bling and rolling thunder and pizzazz build up to the end of the PS4 generation with Tsushima and The Last of Us. Like one of my co-hosts on E2KG, like I couldn't get the guy to shut up about Ghost of Tsushima. um and so it'll be interesting. We know we're getting interlap. I mean, now we know, and maybe it's time to reconsider that, right? We know now, going into the end of this generation into next year, we're going to get Intergalactic and Wolverine. And that probably actually says a lot and probably makes it feel and seem a lot more like Tsushima and Tilu at the end of the PS4 generation. Um, so maybe that's a conversation for us to kind of think through at some point.
yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Did I miss a super chat? No, I didn't. Okay, I thought I missed a super chat. Yeah, the PlayStation thing is I don't think we talk about it enough, but um I just, I just don't really care for how disconnected I feel like they've been with the fan base and with consumers this generation. Um, remember they used to have the PlayStation experience, where you could go out, play PlayStation games. It was kind of like their own E3 in a way. Maybe not like E3, but it was like it was a fan event. Um, and they're not doing things like that anymore, which I think is a shame because I thought those were great things. But Adakot says I have PS5 Pro and Switch 2. There's nothing I want from Xbox, especially now all their games are coming over. Yeah, I certainly appreciate that perspective. I feel the same way.
Oh yeah, that perspective I get. Like if
Yeah, like I don't.
if you're on PS5 and Switch, you're set.
Yeah,
Like
you're good.
You're covered. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I have PC and PS5 Pro and Switch. I mean, I'm even if I just had the PC and the PS5 Pro. I mean,
You had to flex. I was trying to keep us out of flex territory. I was just trying to,
well, I mean
there you go. Quadruple A BRAP.
Look, I love me the goaties and the bangers. So, but anyhow, well, Logic, it is we are at midnight right now. Do we need to wrap up the show? But do me a favor, everyone, please hit that like button if you haven't done so already. If you do, consider subscribing, hitting the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Logic, do you have any of the any closing thoughts before we wrap up the show?
No, I'm gonna go hook up my new keyboard to desktop 160 and play a little Doom the Dark Ages before I go to bed.
Nice. Game that I did not get to earlier this year that released on Game Pass. So no, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to bed and try to get up early and get some get some yote in before work. So
So I do want to make one request, and I'll give up
yeah.
my time for do I want to be followed? Because nobody needs to follow me. I do want to pull a thread because I am curious. So Valinor makes a statement. Thanks for the show. Great community. Enjoy some great games. If you feel strongly about this show, you guys in the chat formulating some sense of like connectivity, like as a community, I'd be interested to hear that. Like you don't have to write a dissertation, but just like this is a community, because that's just a not weird, but like I was like, oh, like when I saw that comment, I was like, oh, really? Like I didn't have any notion of like a BRAP community, but maybe it exists, and I just am oblivious.
Yeah.
If they exist, BRAP, you'll have to come up with a name for them, like the Brapsters or something. I don't know.
The Brapsters. How about the real gamers?
Oh man.
Yeah, no, I never really thought of it like a as like a community per se, but no, thank you for that, Valinor. I appreciate that. I mean, we have tried to cultivate a positive chat, and a place where people can go and just have really good conversations about gaming, and none of the console war stuff, none of the gaslighting and capping for brands and all that other nonsense. So I think we've actually done a great job at providing that kind of experience for those who join us every week. So thank you. Yeah, if you wanna give me a follow, you can follow me at BRAP_podcast. And again, we'll be back here next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Who knows? May do a rant. Could do a rant this weekend, maybe. I did like 2 last week, Thursday and Friday, because all the news had dropped. But outside of that, we'll be back here next Wednesday. Thank you, Nate. Next Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you to everyone in the live chat. Again, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you're alerted when we go live. Big thank you to my co-host here, Game Logic. And we will catch you all next week at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you.